size of the representatives in the House was set back in 1913 by an act or a law, and wanted to see if you'd be more in favor of lifting that to be closer to what President Washington said should be one House member per 30,000 people.
Well, I would certainly not be in favor of that because, right, so the new House for Michigan, after redistricting, we're each going to, if I'm able to get reelected, we will each represent about 775,000 people. So to get to every 30,000 people would be over 20 times as many representatives. So that would be, 8,000 or something. So, but let's say you don't mean that literally and you mean it somewhere in the middle. I mean, I'm not completely against expanding the House a little bit in principle, but I'll tell you this. I feel like the size of the districts now, yeah, they're a lot bigger than a state Senate and especially a state House district. But I really do feel like we are super close to the people. People know me. People stop you in the grocery store. You can cover a whole congressional district, every district work period, get out to a lot of the communities. And I feel like the size of it works pretty well. And 435 is a pretty big body to manage administratively. So I don't, I'm not personally in favor of making the U.S. House a lot bigger, although, I respect those who think that would be a good idea.
Congressman, we just have 30 seconds to the end of the hour. Thoughts on what people should be paying attention to and activists should be doing in the next coming weeks?
Absolutely. I mean, I think what we need to say is that a modest bipartisan infrastructure program is not enough. If the president can achieve one and get Republicans on board for something, it's for definite for sure that it won't be anything like his American Job Plan and America's Family Plan. So we need to really meet his vision head on to move this country forward.
Congressman, thanks so much for dropping by. It's great having you with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too. Great talking with you.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More information at hellofresh.com, code TOM. CB Distillery for sleeping and pain relief. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. Annie's Kit Clubs, creativity delivered right to your door. More info is available at annieskitclubs.com/Tom. EasyFlow, personal air filtration system. Fresh air anywhere. More info at easyflowusa.com, code TOM. Masterclass with world-class instructors. More info at masterclass.com/Hartman. And Dinovite, only the best all-natural pet supplements. More info at dinovite.com.
It is $5 Friday. Yeah, we're trying something new here today. It's the last day of the second week of our fund drive, our pledge drive, and let's really build something. Let's build a strong foundation for Free Speech TV. Let's really make this happen, which is why I'm calling this $5 Friday. When you give a one-time gift to Free Speech TV, that's great, because that's, it's money in the checking account that helps pay the bills, and there's all these expenses associated with running a television network, electricity and staff and everything else. And even though Free Speech TV is run, really on a shoestring compared to big television, big commercial television networks, there are still a lot of expenses associated with getting the show from here to there to you. But when you give a regular monthly contribution, not only is it money in the bank, but it's also a predictable income stream that allows them to budget, to look out, 6 months in advance, a year in advance, and say, or 3 months in advance, whatever it may be, and say, okay, we know that we'll be able to make these expenses. We know that we can contract for this. We know that we can, bring on a new program now, whatever. I mean, you've got to be able to budget, right? You've got to be able to plan. It's just kind of, household 101, business 101. So $5 Friday today, my suggestion is just call Free Speech TV, even if you've called before, unless you're a regular monthly contributor already. But I mean, if you've made one-time gifts or whatever it may be, or if you've never made a gift, call now, 877-378-8669. Call now and say, sign me up for $5 a month for the next year. Or sign me up for $5 a month until I tell you to stop. And let's build that foundation, because that is the base of the pyramid. Everything else rests on top of this regular, predictable monthly income, this regular, predictable monthly revenue that is really so critical to any kind of an organization. It's probably the single biggest challenge that nonprofits have. And I ran a nonprofit for 5 years. And I was on the board for 40 years. The New England Salem Children's Village and the Hunter School. Louise and I started it back in 1978. And our biggest, and we were, supported largely by donations. And every month I had to write the newsletter, and I was traveling all around giving talks and raising money and talking to donors and stuff. And the most difficult part was not knowing what I could expect when I was running that nonprofit. And that's also the most difficult part for Free Speech TV, is not knowing what to expect, is having to deal with things like their emergencies at the last minute sort of thing. And we can solve that problem for Free Speech TV, you and me, especially if you've never donated before, on this $5 Friday with a $5 a month commitment. That's all I'm asking for today. I mean, yes, I'll go through the list of all the premiums and all the goodies and things that you can get, with larger amounts, donations, if you want any of those things. But I've been reciting those now for almost 2 weeks. I'm guessing you probably could, recite them in your sleep. But today, let's make it $5 Friday. Let's build the base. Let's build a foundation on which this network can rest, and rest comfortably. I don't mean rest like relax. I mean, be here, right? Be settled, be solid, have a firm foundation, all that build your home on a rock, not on sand stuff. So please call now, 877-378-8669 with your $5 a month commitment. For one-time gifts with larger amounts, $20, you get the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or the Take Action, Make History Pride sticker. $50, real change comes from the grassroots tote bags. $75, the collector's item Thom Hartmann mug. $100 gift, your choice of the Free Speech TV face mask or the Wilmington on Fire DVD. $120 gift, my book, The Hidden History of Oligarchy, signed by the author, or the Free Speech TV Justice t-shirt. $240 gift, the two-book set, Reclaiming Our Democracy book set, we're calling it, which is the hidden history of American monopolies and the hidden history of American oligarchy. Or you can join us for the Thom Hartmann meet and greet, kind of an off-the-record conversation on Zoom. $360, there's the Thom Hartmann University Summer Box Set with the bumper our bumper sticker, the Free Speech TV bumper sticker, the Take Action, Make History Pride sticker, Free Speech TV Change from the Grassroots tote bag, the Wilmington on Fire DVD, and the collector's item Thom Hartmann mug. And with a $1,000 gift, we'll put you in the line to come here to Portland, which is a beautiful town. I know we've all seen the footage of about a 5-square-block area downtown where there was so much conflict, but you know, that's like a part of Portland that most Portland residents never see, never go. You know, this is a beautiful town. Some of the greatest restaurants everywhere, anywhere. So anyhow, you come to visit. So with $1,000 gift. The bottom line, it's $5 Friday. Call now. It's just $5, right? And if we can get lots and lots of people to kick in $5, we can build that
and
foundation.
Happy Friday, Shabbat Shalom, Juma Mubarak, TGIF, whatever it may be for you. It's Anything Goes Friday. No guests today. It's just you and me. And I got a few things to rant about, but you know, broadly speaking, whatever is on your mind, whether it's you know, UFOs or pigeons or the latest crimes of Bill Barr, feel free to give us a shout at 202-808-9925. The piece I published this morning over at HartmannReport.com is titled, "Trump, who corrupted the highest office in America, must be prosecuted." And, you know, pretty straightforward about this. You know, I start out with Honoré de Balzac, who said, "Behind every great fortune, there's a great crime." And, you know, I point out that Trump obviously made his fortune with a great crime, as his niece, Mary Trump, is suing him right now for basically stealing all or much of his family's money, making himself rich and impoverishing his relatives. But, you know, frankly, I think all of Donald Trump's crimes need to concern us. And sadly, I'm not seeing any evidence. Now, I realize Merrick Garland is going to be giving a statement at some point today about protecting elections. I doubt he's going to wander into this territory, and if there's a Q&A session, I doubt he'll even give a straight answer to whether or not Trump is being investigated, but we'll see. And I'll keep an eye on things and let you know if anything comes out of that. But, you know, the bottom line is that we tend in America not to prosecute the rich and powerful. It's a very straightforward thing. I mean, think about it. Name one billionaire or somebody worth over $100 million, other than Jeffrey Epstein, who has been seriously prosecuted in the last couple of decades. It just doesn't happen anymore. And even Epstein, you know, he got convicted, and the prosecutor down in Florida and the jailer down in Florida, you can go back to, you know, having teenage girls come hang out at you at your compound. And I mean, it was crazy. I mean, he's been permanently shut up, and I'm convinced that there's some nasty stuff there. But I mean, he's literally the only example that I can think of. Maybe there's another one that you know of. But you know, that's just where we're at. And you know, there is a certain immunity available to really wealthy people. They can hire the very best lawyers. And many of them have politicians deeply in debt to them, and sometimes judges. But, you know, France just convicted Sarkozy, their president, of bribery. And Israel has brought charges against Netanyahu for multiple criminal events that could land him years in prison. It's one of the reasons that people speculate that he's pulling a Donald Trump right now. It's fraud. It's the most fraudulent election. You know, it's because he's trying to hang out of power because it's the thing that keeps him out of jail. But neither of those countries have collapsed because their president or prime minister was prosecuted, or in the case of France, convicted. I mean, this is also true of South Korea. It's also true of Taiwan. You know, these countries did not collapse. In fact, you know, accountability is a pretty important thing. You know, Donald Trump brought open fascists into the White House. People like Mike Flynn, Paul Manafort, a long-time career as a grifter, as a mobbed-up criminal tied into Russian-aligned, Ukrainian and other, countries in that former Soviet orbit, oligarchs and billionaires, and I mean, he was doing the dirty work for politicians who literally killed their opponents. That was Paul Manafort. Trump brought him in as campaign manager. And of course, Michael Flynn. And then you got grifters and con artists like Betsy DeVos and Elaine Chao and Wilbur Ross, all who have been not accused of, as in a court of law, but accused of in the media of committing crimes or at least corruption while they're in the White House. And then, of course, there's Bill Barr. I mean, back in 1992, Bill Clinton won that election in November. This was the tail end of the Reagan-Bush era. Reagan had been president from 1980. Well, he won the 1980 election. I'll keep it to round numbers. He won the 1980 election, and then he got reelected in '84, and then his vice president, George Herbert Walker Bush, won the election in '88, and so was president until 1992. And in December, in fact, the week of Christmas, 1992, George Herbert Walker Bush had made, actually several months earlier, had made Bill Barr his attorney general. And Lawrence Walsh and his little crew of investigators were closing in on George Herbert Walker Bush for the Iran-Contra scandal. This is the one where the president of Iran, Abdullah, I can't even pronounce his first name, but Bani Sadr was his last name. He wrote a book about this, actually, which I didn't even know until like a couple months ago. I bought a copy of it online. My story to tell, my turn to tell the story, something like that. Abul Hassan Bani Sadr. And he told the story to the Christian Science Monitor, which is where it's easiest to Google, that when he was president in September of 1992, this is leading up to the November 1992 election between George Herbert, he was president in September of 1980, and this was leading up to the November 1980 election between Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. And the hostages had been held for almost a year at that point. And he ran earlier that year on a platform of freeing the hostages. More than 90% of Iran wanted the hostages freed. They just, it was not a popular thing, what these so-called students did. And so he goes to Ayatollah Khomeini once he becomes president. He goes to Ayatollah Khomeini and says, let's release the hostages. And Khomeini says, we can't do that. We cut a deal with the Reagan campaign to hold them until after the election. And sure enough, the hostages were freed to the minute. As Ronald Reagan, on January 20th, 1981, as Ronald Reagan put his hand on the Bible to be sworn in as president, that was to the minute the moment that the hostages were freed, keeping the deal. So anyhow, Lawrence Walsh, the special prosecutor, was closing in on George Herbert Walker Bush's role in this. Reagan at this point is like, in full-blown dementia, Alzheimer's. Can't testify, can't do anything. And they're going after Bush, and he had subpoenaed Bush's diary, and Bush is like, how do I stop this investigation, Bill Barr? And Bill Barr said, just pardon everybody. He won't have any leverage over anybody anymore. He can't get anybody to testify. You're in the clear. And so, Bush did that. And the headline across the top of the New York Times, Bush pardons 6 in Iran affair, averting a Weinberger trial, prosecutor assails cover-up. Yeah. Bill Barr covered up the crimes of Reagan and Bush. And I would argue those crimes were actually treason. I'm not sure we were actually at war with Iran, so maybe it doesn't quite qualify as treason, but it's damn close. And, that's Bill Barr. And then you got Trump. I mean, the Mueller report, Trump is committing his own crimes. The Mueller report lays out 10 specific examples of obstruction of justice, criminal felony actions by Donald Trump. There's 10 of them. Now, they made the point that under Justice Department guidelines, he can't be prosecuted until he leaves office. But hey, here's the roadmap once he's gone. Is Merrick Garland pursuing this? To the best of our knowledge, no. Why the hell not? I mean, you know, he took bribes from foreign governments. He passed top secret intelligence along to the Russians that led to burning an Israeli spy. That was in his first week in office. He was sending campaign information to the Russians during the 2016 campaign so that they could carefully calibrate their interference on Facebook and other social media. This guy, Donald Trump, was a criminal before he came into the White House and was a criminal during the 4 years that he was in the White House. Very, very straightforward. So now, America has more people in prison than any other country in the world, both on an actual numbers basis and obviously on a per capita basis. Why is that? Well, because we've had, you know, 100 years of tough on crime politicians, which really meant tough on black people politicians, but that's a whole nother rant. But tough on crime politicians who said, you know, if you let criminals get away with crimes, you just empower them. And you also encourage other wannabe criminals to do the same thing. And there actually is some truth to that. I mean, you know, obviously we have not put this thing into practice in any kind of reasonable way. But the point is, if Trump is allowed to get away with this, then when the next corrupt Republican comes along, say Rick Scott, you know, before he became a politician, you know, he made tens of millions, maybe over $100 million from this company that was convicted of the largest Medicare fraud in the history of the United States. And then he took that money and, you know, became the governor of Florida, and then he used his own money to become United States senator, and now he's going to be running for president in 2024. So he gets in the White House, and he's going to look around and go, well, they never prosecuted Donald Trump. I guess I can do this stuff too. Trump directing the Justice Department to go after Eric Swalwell. I mean, in fact, I mean, you know, Trump directing the Justice Department specifically to go after the heads of the Intelligence Committee, the head of the Intelligence Committee, and the guy who was leading his prosecution in the impeachment. And is anything being done about this? We'll see, but I think it is time that we hold this guy accountable. I mean, the Republicans are all about accountability, remember? Bill Clinton, oh, he got a BJ from Monica. We gotta impeach this guy. We gotta hold him accountable. And they did. Of course, he was a Democrat. Holding Republicans accountable? No, not so much. But here's the thing. If we don't hold Trump accountable soon, and Barr, and the other corrupt members of his cabinet, it's going to be too late. And a precedent will have been established to say, yeah, Josh Hawley, Rick Scott, Ted Cruz, whoever is the next Republican president, do whatever the hell you want. No consequences. Nothing to worry about. It's all good. This is nuts. So, anyhow, that's you can read the whole rant and all the links to everything over at HartmannReport.com.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with your calls on Anything Goes Friday right after this. And welcome back. 18 minutes past the hour. Cliff in Santa Clarita, California. Hey, Cliff, what's up?
Good morning there, sir. When you mentioned rich guys going to jail, I immediately thought of Bernie Madoff.
But he wasn't rich.
He wasn't rich?
No, well, I mean, he stole a bunch of money, I suppose. You could say he was rich. But you know why Madoff went to prison? It wasn't because he was running a Ponzi scheme. I mean, there's no shortage of those. He went to prison because he was stealing from rich people.
Oh, okay.
I mean, seriously,
that make him
Cliff.
rich? Didn't that make him rich?
You know, he got rich with his Ponzi scheme, but they took it all away from him. I think, and he was just a upper middle class schlub when he started, as I recall.
Oh, okay.
Okay. He wasn't one of the chosen few, shall we say?
Okay. Hey, I got one real quick theory, Tom.
Sure.
You've mentioned Adolf Hitler being a man that was let's say, not very well endowed, right?
Well, he had one testicle, if that's what you're talking about.
I thought he was a micro.
Oh, we don't know.
Anyway.
I don't know
Okay.
about that, but yeah.
Oh, I thought I heard you say that one time, because according to Stormy Daniels, Mr. Orange Man wasn't super well endowed either.
Yes.
I wonder if
it's like a
it was
little
similar-
mushroom, is what she said. Yes.
the angry inch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering if there's a similarity, like he's angry at the entire world, and that helped make him such a mean.
In other words,
man,
sexual
because-
frustration turns into tyrannical behavior. You know, it may well be.
It's plausible, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and I think that sexual frustration or fear of impotence or whatever is one of the things that drives a lot of these guys that run around with these giant penises guns strapped to their backs.
Pickup trucks.
Yeah, well, and not just the pickup trucks, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's possible. Cliff, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Paul in Lucerne, California. Hey, Paul, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Real quick, to your previous caller, there's a difference between rich and wealth. Most wealthy people don't go to jail. Rich people do go to jail because they're not wealthy. Now, let's get into...
What's the distinction between the two?
If you're wealthy, you got more money than you could ever spend in your lifetime. If you're rich, you can spend that in your lifetime if you really try.
Okay. So that's your
basically
criteria.
the difference.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay. Now, we're in a fight for our democracy right now.
You bet.
And throughout history, the most committed individuals win their fight. And this is a pretty tried and tested rule here. I mean, it's not a law, but the most committed individual usually wins the fight.
Yep.
They are very committed to stealing our democracy.
Yep.
Check it out. Mo Brooks asked these guys, are you willing to die for your commitment? And they said yes by entering that building.
Yep.
Okay? Now, if we do
And
not
one of them
show the
did. I mean, a
same
cop shot
commitment-
one of them.
Yeah. If we do not show the same commitment in trying to take back our democracy, we'll probably lose this fight.
Yeah, but I don't think that by same commitment you mean we need to be breaking into buildings and committing crimes.
No. We have the same commitment, but we
need to be just
nonviolent.
as ferocious and just as committed and just as tenacious.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I'm
But
with you.
we're nonviolent completely because I totally believe you cannot kill for your freedom. You could die for your freedom, but you cannot kill for it.
Yeah. Well,
My suggestion.
tell that to people in World War II. But I get your point, Paul, and I don't disagree with it
They
at all.
weren't fighting for their freedom, Tom. It's totally different.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
can have that argument with you if you like.
Okay. No, we're out of time. But Paul, thank you. I
right.
can't disagree with anything you've said. Thank you. We'll be right back. It's 22 minutes past the hour. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Over at the Thom Hartmann website, ThomHartmann.com, we have the full podcasts and there's just a lot of information, and our newsletter. And the newsletter is extraordinary. It's free. Sue puts it together every day with her stack, and it's just great content. Links to every single article that I talk about on the air, and things that are peripheral to them as well. It's really worth the effort. And then, of course, at HartmannReport.com, there is my daily rant, which is typically incorporated into the program, but it's a written version of it, and that's also something that there's no cost for that at all. So you can check that out as well. Also, we've got a new video up about the dueling memes. If at first you don't succeed, try again, or the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Schumer is going to try to do what Harry Reid did in 2013 by forcing votes. Will it work? We'll see. Check it out at ThomHartmann.com. And welcome back. Anything Goes Friday here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Tony in Chicago. Hey, Tony, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Tom. I've got frustrating point. We have been complaining about the Republican Party for a long time. They are obstructionists and they don't follow any rules. How can we stop them? If their policy is 90% against people, they still do that. And Democrats has a opinion poll of 90% in their favor, still they can do it. I know there are some rules in this country that they can overrun it, but can Mr. Biden, or President Biden, sorry, make an executive order and go with his $60 trillion package?
Make an executive order to pass you're talking about the infrastructure bill?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he can't. The Constitution's really clear about this. The Congress is the only body, of the three branches of government. You have Congress, the courts, and the executive branch, the presidency. And Congress raises taxes and spends money or appropriates money. And then Congress then hands that money off with specific instructions as to how it's to be used to the executive branch, and the executive branch actually then writes the checks and hires the contractors or the government employees and gets things done and all that kind of stuff. So, while Biden, there are some small areas where what you're talking about, Tony, Biden could do. For example, Donald Trump took $5 billion out of the money that had been appropriated for the Pentagon, and that was going to be used to upgrade soldiers' housing. You've got a bunch of housing in the United States on military bases where, it's rat infested or there's mold in the walls and stuff like that, and they were going to rehab all this stuff. He took that money and used it to build his wall down on the southern border because Congress refused to appropriate the money for the wall. So Biden could move a little bit of money here and there in some ways, although there are those who argue that what Trump did was a crime. But he couldn't do that with $1 trillion.
Well, but the question is, Republicans don't want it because I know that if this happens, people will be happy and they will not, Republicans won't win in 2022 or 24. And they will definitely make sure it doesn't happen. So how we rectify the issue, because Democrat senators from West Virginia are not on board with this.
Yeah. There is no way to rectify the issue, Tony. I mean, the bottom line is Mitch McConnell has made it very clear that he's going to try to prevent any consequential legislation from passing Congress so that Joe Biden will have no victories, so that in 2022, particularly young people will get real cynical and say, those Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans. They don't do a damn thing. That's Mitch McConnell's plan. And, other than getting a larger majority, there's no way to stop it. Tony, thank you for the call.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I mean, we can lobby, Manchin and Sinema to blow up the filibuster, and then we could pass all kinds of stuff. And I think we should do that. It is $5 Friday. Yeah, we're trying something new here today. It's the last day of the second week of our fund drive, our pledge drive, and let's really build something. Let's build a strong foundation for Free Speech TV. Let's really make this happen, which is why I'm calling this $5 Friday. When you give a one-time gift to Free Speech TV, that's great, because that's, it's money in the checking account that helps pay the bills, and there's all these expenses associated with running a television network, electricity and staff and everything else. And even though Free Speech TV is run, really on a shoestring compared to big television, big commercial television networks, there are still a lot of expenses associated with getting the show from here to there to you. But when you give a regular monthly contribution, not only is it money in the bank, but it's also a predictable income stream that allows them to budget, to look out, 6 months in advance, a year in advance, and say, or 3 months in advance, whatever it may be, and say, okay, we know that we'll be able to make these expenses. We know that we can contract for this. We know that we can, bring on a new program now, whatever. I mean, you've got to be able to budget, right? You've got to be able to plan. It's just kind of, household 101, business 101. So $5 Friday today, my suggestion is just call Free Speech TV, even if you've called before, unless you're a regular monthly contributor already. But I mean, if you've made one-time gifts or whatever it may be, or if you've never made a gift, call now, 877-378-8669. Call now and say, sign me up for $5 a month for the next year. Or sign me up for $5 a month until I tell you to stop. And let's build that foundation, because that is the base of the pyramid. Everything else rests on top of this
regular, predictable monthly income, this regular, predictable monthly revenue that is really so critical to any kind of an organization. It's probably the single biggest challenge that nonprofits have. And I ran a nonprofit for 5 years, and I was on the board for 40 years. You know, the New England Salem Children's Village and the Hunter School. Louise and I started it back in 1978. And our biggest, and we were, you know, supported largely by donations. And every month I had to write the newsletter, and I was traveling all around giving talks and, you know, raising money and talking to donors and stuff. And the most difficult part was not knowing what I could expect when I was running that nonprofit. And that's also the most difficult part for Free Speech TV, is not knowing what to expect, is having to deal with things like there are emergencies at the last minute sort of thing. And we can solve that problem for Free Speech TV, you and me, especially if you've never donated before, on this $5 Friday with a $5 a month commitment. That's all I'm asking for today. I mean, yes, I'll go through the list of all the premiums and all the goodies and things that you can get, you know, with larger amounts donations if you want any of those things. But I've been reciting those now for almost 2 weeks. I'm guessing you probably could, you know, recite them in your sleep. But today, let's make it $5 Friday. Let's build the base. Let's build a foundation on which this network can rest, and rest comfortably. I don't mean rest like relax. I mean, you know, be here, right? Be settled, be solid, have a firm foundation, all that build your home on a rock, not on sand stuff. So please call now, 877-378-8669 with your $5 a month commitment. For one-time gifts with larger amounts, $20, you get the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or the Take Action, Make History Pride sticker. $50, real change comes from the grassroots tote bags. $75, the collector's item Thom Hartmann mug. $100 gift, your choice of the Free Speech TV face mask or the Wilmington on Fire DVD. $120 gift, my book, The Hidden History of Oligarchy, signed by the author, or the Free Speech TV Justice t-shirt. $240 gift, the 2-book set, Reclaiming Our Democracy book set, we're calling it, which is the Hidden History of American Monopolies and the Hidden History of American Oligarchy. Or you can join us for the Thom Hartmann meet and greet, kind of an off-the-record conversation on Zoom. $360, there's the Thom Hartmann University summer box set with the our bumper sticker, the Free Speech TV bumper sticker, the Take Action, Make History Pride sticker, Free Speech TV change from the grassroots tote bag, the Wilmington on Fire DVD, and the collector's item Thom Hartmann mug. And with a $1,000 gift, we'll put you in the line to come here to Portland, which is a beautiful town. I know we've all seen the footage of about a 5-square-block area downtown where there was so much conflict, but you know, that's like a part of Portland that most Portland residents never see, never go. You know, this is a beautiful town. Some of the greatest restaurants everywhere, anywhere. So anyhow, you can come and visit us with a $1,000 gift. But bottom line, it's $5 Friday. Call now. It's just $5, right? And if we can get lots and lots of people to kick in $5, we can build that foundation. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. So with some fancy footwork math, you can take the GDP of the United States, the productivity, the amount of wealth that is produced, or goods and services that are produced every year by American workers, and divide it by the number of workers, and what you get is that the average worker in America is producing about $75 an hour worth of value for their employer. And the minimum wage pays them about 10% of that value. Now, back in 1950, the minimum wage paid 30%
of the value of the productivity that the average worker is producing for their employer. If we took the minimum wage up to $15 an hour tomorrow, it would still be in the neighborhood of 20%. So there's a strong case for increasing the minimum wage based on history. I lay this all out in the new video that we have just for our people who are supporters of our program over at ThomHartmann.com. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you and picking up your phone calls. Ron in Chicago. Hey, Ron, what's up?
Yes, Tom. Speaking of nuts, could you verify this? Did Louis Gohmert say yesterday that land management should stop the earth from spinning so that global warming will disappear?
Yes. Words to that effect. I haven't. I've only seen the headlines. I haven't done the deep dive because it's like, oh my God, it's Louis Gohmert again.
I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it, but it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, the Republicans are no longer going to use the word criminals. They're going to use the word disruptors.
Yeah, for January 6th?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, hey, there is one member of the House of Representatives who got expelled for letting rioters into the Capitol, although it wasn't in D.C., it was here in Oregon, and he got kicked out yesterday. His name is Representative Mike Neerman, and he was criminally charged back in April. He basically told these folks, I'll open the door for you, and then he did, and they came in for about an hour chanting, "Arrest Kate Brown," who's our governor. He got officially kicked out of the House of Representatives yesterday on a 59-1 vote. The only one vote to not kick him out was his own vote. So, we can do it in Oregon. I don't know why they can't do it in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, that's a start. Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
There you go. Okay, thanks a lot. Let's see here. Mark in Chicago says you disagree with me. What do you disagree with me about, Mark?
Well, I don't disagree. I wanted your take, as I mentioned to the call screener, Tom, that I am a conservative. I live here in Illinois my entire life. And there's a pattern here with some of the Illinois, Tom, is an abject failure almost across every metric. And I had mentioned to the call screener that Chicago has not had a Republican mayor in, I think, since back the 30s, okay? We have had some Republican governors, but it's been very, very sparse. This is not the only example. You've got California and some other areas that are just woefully dysfunctional.
California's doing great, Mark. You want woefully dysfunctional? Look at Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi, where you've got a vaccination rate below 30 and where you've got infant and child mortality rates. We're talking dead people, infant and child mortality rates that are worse than third world countries. I mean, the Republican-run states are absolute flaming disasters. The majority of this country's GDP comes out of democratically run states. The quality of life is better in democratically run states. Yes, a lot of our cities have some challenges, but please name one big city run by a Republican that is really doing well right now. Actually, I can name one for you, Salt Lake City, but that's about it.
Hey, Tom.
Yes, sir.
All these states, and I'm not suggesting that there aren't issues. There's issues across the board. Illinois people are fleeing this state. I believe it a rate higher than any other state in the country.
Well, you say people are fleeing, Mark.
Jersey,
I'm not.
Other states don't have issues, but when you've got the kind of corruption, the taxes, and just the overall corruption, it's off the charts.
Okay, so what's your question, Mark?
Well, my question is, don't you see an issue there that when you've got supermajority democratically run, and to think that Illinois is even remotely a functioning state?
Well, I disagree with your premise. I think Illinois is functioning fairly well, and I think a good chunk of Chicago is functioning fairly well. You do have there, as you have in many cities in the United States, as a consequence of decades and decades of redlining. The latest thing that we just learned about, or at least I just learned about in the last 6 months or so, was that when the highways were put in back in the 1950s, They were intentionally run right through the middle of or on the borders of largely black communities. And what they effectively did is they isolated those communities. They literally created ghettos of poverty and locked people into those communities. And, you know, this was done for the benefit of largely white suburban people. And so you've got cities that are struggling with a legacy of this kind of structural racism. I don't have an easy answer for it. Do you?
I don't. And I told your call screener, who I enjoy talking with, by the way, you mentioned, you know, you brought in racism. And there's another thing that, and I told her I would stay on topic, but since you nibbled on it, you nibbled around the edges. Black people had been voting Democratic overwhelmingly for 50 years.
Since the 1960s, yeah.
Yeah, that Tom, again, to me, I'm just observing. I'm just a 59-year-old man that's just observing, and I think the black person has been, their life and quality of life has been, it's not even close. I mean, I think it has gotten significantly worse over that period of time. And I think, where's the return on your investment for voting Democratic for 50 years?
Well, you've got to consider the challenges that you're up against, Mark. For example, Lyndon Johnson cut poverty in half in the United States and more than in half in the black community in less than a decade with the Great Society programs. When Ronald Reagan came into office in 1981, one of the first things he did in the first 6 months of his administration was cut housing subsidies in Section 8 housing, which was working quite well at that point in time, cut it in half. He cut it again by another quarter over the next 7 years. So, you know, in addition to shutting down, you know, mental health facilities and homeless shelters that were federally funded. So he basically dumped all that stuff on the cities in order to, you know, as a consequence of his massive tax cut. He dropped the top income tax rate from 74% down to 25%, and then said, hey, we don't have any money. And you know, this is what happened. So if you're a city run by a Democrat or a Republican, what do you do?
Well, you know what, Tom? You obviously have all the facts and figures. I'm just looking at there's been, you know, the Clintons were in office. Barack Obama was in office. What I have seen with the black community, I think, is absolutely horrendous on how, my observation, they vote Democratic and they get all kinds of promises. And, Tom, the result has been just where I would want
you know,
to say,
Mark, I suspect that
where's the return on your investment?
There is a thriving black middle class in Chicago. You're probably unaware of it. You don't hear about it on right-wing white right-wing talk radio. There's an affluent black community in Chicago. You know, yes, and there's also a poor black community. There's also a poor white community in Chicago. There's a poor Hispanic community in Chicago. And in any of those, you know, there's an association between poverty and crime. And there's an association between homelessness and crime. And we could do something about that. Lyndon Johnson tried to essentially outlaw poverty and homelessness. And he had incredible success over 10 years. And then Reagan came in and dismantled it. Bush continued those policies, Bush the elder. Bill Clinton actually continued those policies. And of course, you had Newt Gingrich taking over Congress, the House of Representatives. So, you know, even if Clinton didn't want to continue those policies, there wasn't much he could do. So instead, Clinton came out and said, well, we're going to end welfare as you know it. And he cut everything to no more than 5 years. And, you know, frankly, we have been living in this Reaganomics world, in this neoliberal austerity world since 1981. And we're still there. And if Biden can't get through Congress, you know, $4 or $5 trillion worth of spending, which is just a drop in the bucket. You look at the American Society of Engineers, which is like, has nothing to do with politics. And they're saying, you know, we've got a 4, 5, 6 trillion, depending on whose numbers you're using, deficit just in maintenance on our infrastructure. Much less do we want to build, you know, the kind of rail that can support high-speed rail like you've got in South Korea or Taiwan or China or all over Europe. Or do you want to have high-speed broadband like Chattanooga has done? You know, 1 gig broadband for everybody in town, and it's run by the city, so there's no profit motive. It's less expensive than getting it from these for-profit companies. If the Republicans can continue to obstruct this and keep us in Reaganomics austerity, then yeah, you're going to have Democratic-run areas that do not have access to these resources, and they are presiding over cities that don't have a large enough tax base in those areas where there is poverty, so that they can raise enough money to rebuild their schools and rebuild their infrastructure. You know, not to mention, like I said, that those communities are physically segregated by things like freeways and whatnot. It's going to be a real challenge. And the Republicans are going to continue talking, you know, like what you're saying here, essentially. Oh, look at that, they're doing poorly. Well, yeah, we set this situation up. Yeah, Mark.
That's not fair. You know, everything is the Republicans' fault. You know, everything is.
I will acknowledge, Mark, that everything is not the Republicans' fault. In fact, I thought I just said Bill Clinton did not do anything consequential about this. But, you know, anyhow, Mark, thanks. I'm sorry, we're out of time.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit TomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
I think rather than politicizing this Democratic-Republican, really what we need to be looking at are the right-wing billionaires who don't want to pay their taxes, who are supporting these conservative politicians. And welcome back, Jeff in San Francisco. Hey, Jeff, what's on your mind today?
Well, I just think the Democrats are a little disingenuous if we can't pass the Stock Act. Obama wanted that you can't use insider trading, and there's a lot of them on both sides doing that. So, I mean, if we really want to see genuine about stopping corruption, I think that's very corrupt, knowing that, you know, Microsoft's going to go up because they just got a $25 billion deal for defense for headsets, and then you invest $10 million in it. That's a pretty good. I don't find that very legal. It is legal though.
Is what you're talking, Jeff? I'm not sure I understand what you're talking about. Are you talking about the fact that members of Congress can basically trade stock on insider information?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's something that needs to be cleaned up.
And it's both sides of the aisle do it, and you know, I don't see anything get cleaned up until
what was his name? Brian Baird, right, Sean? Yeah, when Brian Baird was representing the community right across the river from us, Vancouver, Washington, in Congress, and I was doing this show from the studios at KPOJ. This was like 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. Brian Baird came into my studio one day and said, "Oh my God, I got to tell you what I saw." He was visiting a Republican colleague, and they were working together on a piece of legislation. And this guy had 3 people in his office, as I recall, who were doing day trading on computers in their office. And they were doing it based on inside information that this Republican member of Congress had. And so Brian Baird went to Nancy Pelosi and said, "Did you know that this is going on?" And she's like, "No, I had no idea it's going on. What the hell are you talking about?" And so they went after this guy. And I'm sorry, I don't remember his name. Brian mentioned it on the air, as I recall. And they went after this guy, and it turned out his response was, "Hey, Paul Ryan." They're doing it out of Paul Ryan's office. They're doing it, they're doing it out of all, this is a common thing in the Republican Party. And the Democratic caucus was like, "What?" Just shocked. And that led to Brian Baird introducing legislation to try to stop that, which was blocked by Paul Ryan. So I don't know if they ever cleaned this thing up or not.
You just mentioned
it may not be partisan any longer if this is going on. But it certainly started out this way.
Yeah, but
what's your point, Jeff?
Well, I mean, how genuine? I mean, yeah, of course, he's a traitor. But if we can't clean up the own house on both sides of the aisle, and there's a lot of dinosaurs in there and the Democrats that are doing the same thing, Tom, and
I
you
don't
know
think
who
so.
I'm talking about.
I really don't think so, Jeff.
Oh, can I say one thing? And I hate saying it. The one who just invested $10 million in Microsoft while she was on the committee that gave $25 billion to Microsoft was Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi doesn't manage her own money. It's all in a blind trust. So if her trust put money into Microsoft, that may, which is entirely reasonable and possible, that's a whole different thing than these other members of Congress who are managing their own money and are doing day trading.
Yeah, but I think it's on both sides.
No, yeah, but I really don't think it's on both sides, Jeff. I really don't. And this both sidesism, again, I'll remind you, this was the principal message that the Russian trolls were promoting on Facebook in 2016 to try to discourage Democrats from voting. Find a Democrat who's doing day trading in Congress. I don't think you can. Anyhow, we'll be back. It's 10 minutes before the hour. Stick around. Our 1 hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3 hour podcast available over at TomHartmann.com if you want to really support our program. So the Republican Party has sold themselves way back, all the way back to the 60s, really, as the serious party. We're the party of issues. We take stuff seriously. We have serious policy analysis. We have serious constitutional analysis. We are serious about the economy. We have all these think tanks, Heritage and Competitive Enterprise and Cato, and we've got the Federalist Society finding serious judges that we can put on the federal bench. And in response to 4 dead Americans, they got real serious. 5 House committees, 2 Senate committees. They created a separate House Select Committee for 4 dead Americans. That was Benghazi. Thousands of hours of testimony. The Secretary of State testifying for 8 hours straight. But when 5 people die at the Capitol, not so much. Got a new video about it over at TomHartmann.com. Anything Goes Friday here on the Thom Hartmann Program. And Tim in Burlington, Vermont. Hey, Tim, what's up?
Hey, hi, Tom. I think one of the things that we're missing is that we've had this society where white male landowners could get away with murder from the very beginning of time here in the United States, or pre-United States.
Sure.
And we have a culture of that.
Yeah.
And everything we're kind of talking about today that I've been hearing stems from that mindset.
Yeah, I think you could argue racialized patriarchy came out of the agricultural revolution, and the earliest example of it is the Epic of Gilgamesh, 7,000 years ago in Samaria. But yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, and it's just, you were talking about the redlining, and I know when I was living in Sacramento and I grew up in California, and Reagan ruined, so much of, the society in California. Back in the 70s when he was governor, and he did the same thing to the rest of our country when he became president. So I just wanted to make that point, is that, I think we have this systemic racism of white males dominating and getting away with murder.
You know why your property taxes pay for your schools?
Probably that same reason.
It is exactly that same reason, and it goes back to the 19-teens. And as communities started, public schools started in the United States in the 1880s, and by the 19-teens, they were pretty much spreading across the country. They started in Boston, actually. Horace Mann was the big evangelist for them. And Horace Mann, among others, was saying that communities should pay for their own schools with their own taxes. Now, why was that? Because poor black communities would then have crappy schools, and white wealthy communities could have really cool schools, and this is a great way of enforcing this racial order, essentially. Back to the conservative caller who was talking about, whoa, what about Chicago? Well, hey, when so much of what you do in a community has to be financed with property taxes rather than statewide taxes or federal taxes, you are going to have these kinds of inequalities that have been with us for centuries, literally. Continue. It rigidifies them. And so, I'm totally with you. Tim, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. It's great to hear from you. Larry in Los Angeles. Hey, Larry, what's on your mind?
All right. I need to qualify what I'm about to say because I agree with you more than anybody that's on TV or radio.
What?
But sometimes you really get me my motor running.
Okay.
That conservative caller who sit back and made a blatant bald-faced lie. I'll just call it what it is. He claims that minorities do not benefit from Democrats when Democrats are in the White House. Bill Clinton saw 23 million jobs created when he was president. Donald Trump lost 3 million jobs. And I've heard it said many times when it comes to black people, last hired, first fired.
Sure. And that's, by the way, that's not only true of black people, that's also true generally of poor people, regardless of race.
Yeah. And so when you have a situation where the Democrats can only hold the White House for 8 years at a time, and then you get some fascist-loving Republican somehow cheats his way to get into the White House and gives us a recession. So now you have these minorities who are going out in there. They've saved all their money, their life savings, and they put it down on a house. First fired, last hired. When that Republican gives them a recession, who then loses their house first?
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely
and this
right.
has been happening. I'm 69 years old now, and I'm older than that clown. And excuse me, I'm trying to contain myself.
Mm.
But I'm older than that clown who said he's been observing things, just like I've been observing things all my life. I can see the difference between what's been happening with between the minorities and white people, just as clear as day. Why can't he?
Well, there is this mythology that is spread on right-wing radio and right-wing television, Fox News, across the right-wing media, that everybody is only responsible for themselves, essentially, and that if black communities are struggling, it's because of black communities. And the fact of the matter is the black communities have been under the thumb of white people forever in this state, in this country. I mean, literally, and continue to be.
And except that what happens when those Republicans give us a recession, gives all of America a recession.
Yeah.
What does the government do? They step in. In this last time, it's one of the most egregious things that they've ever done. They stepped into the stock market and gave white people, the stock owners, reparations for the damage that Donald Trump did to the economy.
You're right, and they did it in 2000.
That didn't go to black.
That
did not go to black and Asian and Hispanic community. That went to white America.
You're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. And by the way, the same thing happened in 2009, after George Bush crashed the economy. Larry, I'm with you. Larry, I got to run, but thank you for the call.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More information at HelloFresh.com, code TOM. CB Distillery for sleeping and pain relief. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. Annie's Kit Clubs, creativity delivered right to your door. More info is available at annieskitclubs.com/Tom. EasyFlow, personal air filtration system. Fresh air anywhere. More info at easyflowusa.com, code TOM. Masterclass with world-class instructors. More info at masterclass.com/Hartman. And Dinovite, only the best all-natural pet supplements. More info at dinovite.com.
We say fight back!
$5 Friday. Yeah, we're trying something new here today. It's the last day of the second week of our fund drive, our pledge drive, and let's really build something. Let's build a strong foundation for Free Speech TV. Let's really make this happen, which is why I'm calling this $5 Friday. When you give a one-time gift to Free Speech TV, that's great, because that's, it's money in the checking account that helps pay the bills, and there's all these expenses associated with running a television network, electricity and staff and everything else. And even though Free Speech TV is run, really on a shoestring compared to big television, big commercial television networks, there are still a lot of expenses associated with getting the show from here to there to you. But when you give a regular monthly contribution, not only is it money in the bank, but it's also a predictable income stream that allows them to budget, to look out, 6 months in advance, a year in advance, and say, or 3 months in advance, whatever it may be, and say, okay, we know that we'll be able to make these expenses. We know that we can contract for this. We know that we can, bring on a new program now, whatever. I mean, you've got to be able to budget, right? You've got to be able to plan. It's just kind of, household 101, business 101. So $5 Friday today, my suggestion is just call Free Speech TV, even if you've called before, unless you're a regular monthly contributor already. But I mean, if you've made one-time gifts or whatever it may be, or if you've never made a gift, call now, 877-378-8669. Call now and say, sign me up for $5 a month for the next year. Or sign me up for $5 a month until I tell you to stop. And let's build that foundation, because that is the base of the pyramid. Everything else rests on top of this regular, predictable monthly income, this regular, predictable monthly revenue that is really so critical to any kind of an organization. It's probably the single biggest challenge that nonprofits have. And I ran a nonprofit for 5 years, and I was on the board for 40 years. The New England Salem Children's Village and the Hunter School. Louise and I started it back in 1978. And our biggest, and we were, supported largely by donations. And every month I had to write the newsletter, and I was traveling all around giving talks and raising money and talking to donors and stuff. And the most difficult part was not knowing what I could expect when I was running that nonprofit. And that's also the most difficult part for Free Speech TV, is not knowing what to expect, is having to deal with things like their emergencies at the last minute sort of thing. And we can solve that problem for Free Speech TV, you and me, especially if you've never donated before, on this $5 Friday with a $5 a month commitment. That's all I'm asking for today. I mean, yes, I'll go through the list of all the premiums and all the goodies and things that you can get, with larger amounts, donations, if you want any of those things. But I've been reciting those now for almost 2 weeks. I'm guessing you probably could, recite them in your sleep. But today, let's make it $5 Friday. Let's build the base. Let's build a foundation on which this network can rest, and rest comfortably. I don't mean rest like relax. I mean, be here, right? Be settled, be solid, have a firm foundation. All that build your home on a rock, not on sand stuff. So please call now, 877-378-8669 with your $5 a month commitment. For one-time gifts with larger amounts, $20, you get the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or the Take Action, Make History Pride sticker. $50, real change comes from the grassroots tote bags. $75, the collector's item Thom Hartmann mug. $100 gift, your choice of the Free Speech TV face mask or the Wilmington on Fire DVD. $120 gift, my book, The Hidden History of Oligarchy, signed by the author, or the Free Speech TV Justice t-shirt. $240 gift, the two-book set, Reclaiming Our Democracy book set, we're calling it, which is The Hidden History of American Monopolies and The Hidden History of American Oligarchy. Or you can join us for the Thom Hartmann meet and greet, kind of an off-the-record conversation on Zoom. $360. There's the Thom Hartmann University Summer Box Set with the bumper, our bumper sticker, the Free Speech TV bumper sticker, the Take Action, Make History Pride sticker, Free Speech TV Change from the Grassroots tote bag, the Wilmington on Fire DVD, and the collector's item Thom Hartmann mug. And with a $1,000 gift, we'll put you in the line to come here to Portland, which is a beautiful town. I know we've all seen the footage of about a 5-square-block area downtown where there was so much conflict, but you know, that's like a part of Portland that most Portland residents never see, never go. You know, this is a beautiful town. Some of the greatest restaurants everywhere, anywhere. So anyhow, you can come and visit us with a $1,000 gift. But bottom line, it's $5 Friday. Call now. It's just $5, right? And if we can get lots and lots of people to kick in $5, we can build that foundation. So please call now, 877-378-8669.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back to the second hour of Anything Goes Friday. Per our conversation the previous hour with our conservative caller from Chicago, a.k.a. Mark on Twitter, says, Tom, Fox News et al. Constantly bring up Chicago so as to intentionally infer black people. According to federal statistics, Chicago's murder rate does not even crack the top 20 most violent U.S. cities, many of which are in red states and run by Republican administrations. And then Yvette tweets at me, I'm a realtor in Chicagoland and people are not fleeing. We have more buyers than sellers. I work relocation and many companies are moving to Chicago. Procter & Gamble, Amazon, Mondelez, and more. I'm probably mispronouncing that. It's simply not true about the mass exodus. Pritzker has been great for it. And, you know, then it goes on. This caller obviously hasn't paid, this is from Nanette, obviously hasn't paid attention to the racist policies the GOP has put upon us. GOP damn sure wouldn't and won't do anything for black people. Is he suggesting we would be better off if we voted Republican? And, you know, et cetera. So this is, you know, Charlie D., this guy's echoing typical GOP talking points about Illinois. Kecko. Dude is lying from Chicago and Illinois. We had Republicans as governors for 26 straight years. We just went through the Ronner complacency period. We have the third or fourth largest economy in the nation, a premier city, and plenty of money. And then, you know, it goes on from there. So, thank you. Thank you for correcting the record. Thanks for cleaning it all up. Trump is ongoing. By the way, you know, Trump's corruption of the Justice Department. I just retweeted a tweet. I'd have to poke around on my screen right now, and I'm on the air, so I can't tell you the name of the person that I just retweeted. But I just retweeted a person who was retweeting a tweet from Donald Trump calling Adam Schiff the world's largest leaker at the same month that Trump was leaning on the Justice Department and Barr was you know, demanding Adam Schiff and his family's records. So, you know, this is clearly coming from the top. This needs to be prosecuted. And then, you know, this ongoing mess, Aaron Blake in today's Washington Post. Donald Trump sought to politicize and weaponize the Justice Department, perhaps more than any president since Richard Nixon. Amen. And he goes on to note, we might not even know the half of it. I think we don't know the 10% of it yet. Going after Swalwell and Schiff. First it was the Washington Post reporters, then it was a CNN reporter, then it was reporters from the Times. I mean, this is what we've just learned about, right? And that's because the Justice Department has finally said to the people who are being surveilled, hey, by the way, we've been surveilling you. But what else did Trump do? Well, he fired the guy who was leading the Russia investigation. That was James Comey. And, no, I'm good. And then, there's quite a list here. And then he tried to remove Comey's basically replacement, Special Counsel Robert Mueller.
and tried to get Don McGahn to lie about it. He repeatedly pressured Jeff Sessions to fire Andrew McCabe, who was then the acting deputy, the FBI's deputy director. And Sessions fired McCabe just a few hours before he could have retired with a pension. I mean, it wasn't just a firing, it was a punishment. He kept saying that the Department of Justice should reinvestigate Hillary Clinton. This was Trump. Repeatedly pressured the DOJ to go easy on people like Michael Stone and Paul Manafort and Roger Stone. And now we just discovered earlier this week or late last week that Mark Meadows, the former, crazy train, cokehead Republican member of the House of Representatives who went on to become Trump's chief of staff, that Mark Meadows was sending emails to the Justice Department trying to get them to look into all this election fraud that put Joe Biden in office. Right. Which raises an interesting question. And I'll just hang this out there. I don't claim ownership of this. I got this from Tin Robot over at DemocraticUnderground.com. And Tin writes, he didn't just spy on Democrats. One thing that came to mind about the DOJ spying thing, if they could do it to Democrats, they could also do it to Republicans. And you wonder why Lindsey Graham and so many other Republicans fell in line so quickly after Trump took office. Interesting question. Anyhow, let's pick up some of your phone calls here. Jennifer in Detroit. Hey, Jennifer, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Just wanted to chime in on the discussion you had with Mark earlier, because he's mentioned something about black people and voting for Democrats over the last 50 years. And just kind of being someone who is a black person, I just wanted to share kind of a narrative that I think we need to understand, kind of history, that there isn't a real two-party system if you are a African American person, and you are concerned about things like education and crime and police and equal treatment and climate, and that's been consistent. 50 years ago was 1961, and I was telling your screener, in the 60s, my grandfather, who was a self-taught person, World War, Korean War vet, but couldn't get a mortgage in one of the communities just right outside the city because of redlining.
Yep.
And the mortgage he had in the city of Detroit, on the deed, it said, do not sell to Negroes until 1973.
Wow.
On the actual deed. So it needs to be an education on the policies that have been in place and the work that has had to be done in our community just to get what I call basic American dream and survival tactics. Good schools. Could go on. When we were trying, you mentioned the freeways in the city. Right in our area, we live up close to the freeway because of the gentrification, and the community next to us, they had a wall, a noise wall. Took us 30 years to get that same wall just right on the other side of the boulevard.
So the noise from the freeway doesn't come into the neighborhood, and the white neighborhood was protected and the black neighborhood was not protected from that noise. And we know that highway noise actually, not just noise, by the way, the pollution comes along with it too, actually increases your risk of a heart attack. I mean, it's a stressor.
Yep, and I mean, like the events for 30 years, they asked just for the same wall that just on the side of the boulevard had.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't get that. And it's those small micro, aggressions that you have to go to. And there's only been, one particular group does not even hear these complaints, in my opinion.
Right.
It is that talking to you, telling you, what you need to do when you are having a conversation and saying, this is the problem we are experiencing. This is the policy that we want to put in place. And you're being told what's best for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's so much of this stuff that's still around, and the property tax one is one of the ones that I find the most outrageous, that paying for schools with property taxes guarantees that neighborhoods that are struggling are going to have schools that are struggling, and neighborhoods that are wealthy are going to have schools that are wealthy. And that, how is that equal protection under the law? It's you know, as just one example. We've got a long way to go here, Jennifer. We've got a lot of work to do, and I hope we can. Yes. I hope we can do it.
And I mean, but these are the stories I think we need to tell and share, because I just don't think a lot of people know.
I agree.
About, you know, these small policy things that are in place that keep people, like you said, from educating their children, achieving the American dream that they work for.
Yep. And it should be available to everybody. Jennifer, thank you. Thank you so much. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, stick around. We're just getting started here on Anything Goes Friday. 15 minutes past the hour. Back with more of your calls in just a moment. And welcome back. Nick in Highland, California. Hey, Nick, what's on your mind today?
Oh, hi. I have a analogy for you.
Okay.
Okay. If mask is akin to a condom, and the pandemic now is akin to an epidemic of 40 years ago, and you and I are old enough to remember that.
You talking about AIDS?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a certain kind of person that won't wear either, even though there's a bowl of free condoms by the exit and there's a stack of free masks.
Yeah, you're talking about these super entitled men.
Yeah. They're invincible.
Or at least they think they are. I'm very concerned that this is going to come back to bite Republican communities in a way that's going to be absolutely terrible. Now that the Delta variant, the most deadly of all of the COVID variants, is starting to spread in the United States. This is why Great Britain is talking about, you know, the June 23rd reopening. They are seriously talking about postponing it because not everybody in the country is vaccinated. And it turns out that if you've only had one shot of either of the two shot vaccines, this Delta variant will still eat your lunch. It'll still infect you. And if you've had COVID before, it doesn't care. It'll reinfect you again, and you can end up in the hospital. And we've got all these red states, and now here in Oregon. I mean, like I said, I get every day, you know, an email. I get a list of all the people who died and which counties they're from in Oregon of COVID, and all the people who've been diagnosed with COVID in Oregon and which counties they're from. And basically Multnomah County, which is Portland, you know, is very, very blue, and the county around Salem, we're doing great. You know, I mean, we're down to like 50 cases. We had 23 cases, I think, you know, one day this week, new cases. But then you look at the red counties, and you know they're getting more and more cases, more and more deaths, and I have this horrible feeling that Louisiana, well, not just Louisiana. I mean, I think it's going to hit Kentucky. I think there's a lot of these red states. In fact, Kansas has been one of the top states in terms of deaths recently. So these Republican states that don't believe in this are going to get hit by this variant when it arrives. I mean, maybe these people can avoid the wild virus by just, you know, social distancing or just good luck. But when this thing comes along, it's 6 times more contagious and substantially more deadly, and it's hitting children. It's going to be a tough one, Nick.
And the sad thing is that if you've had COVID and survived, then you think you can't get it again, so you don't need to get vaccinated or
exactly
because you're immune.
And you're not.
Immune.
You're not immune to the variants.
No. So good luck with that.
Yeah, and then the really scary thing is, and this is why
I think at the G7 they're talking about, throwing 1 billion doses of vaccine into the world, is that this is just what, the 4th or 5th major variant that we've seen? How many more are coming down the road? How much more contagious are they going to be? How much more deadly are they going to be? I mean, this Delta variant actually turns off the immune system at the cellular level. That's never happened before with COVID that we know of. We need to stop this virus all over the world. Nick, I got to run, but thank you for the call. Well said. We'll be right back. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. We're available on SiriusXM, Free Speech TV, Pacifica, commercial stations nationwide, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, on the Thom Hartmann app, and you can even tell your smart speaker to listen to the Thom Hartmann Program. We're trying to provide the very best content that we can for you at Hartmann Report and over at ThomHartmann.com. And on Hartmann Report, every day, 6 days a week, I write an op-ed. Very often they're my rants, also for the radio and television program. And it's ad-free, commercial-free. It's free. You can sign up. It'll get pushed into your email box. Check it out at HartmannReport.com. And, of course, over at ThomHartmann.com, we have our weekly video that we put up every week that, does a deeper dive for people who are members of our program, of ThomHartmann.com. And the one this week is about this Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, SIGAR, their new report that almost 20 million Afghans are on the verge of starvation and nobody's talking about it. Check it out at ThomHartmann.com. And welcome back to Anything Goes Friday. By the way, the city of Doral, Florida, I might have mentioned this day before yesterday, but I think I didn't get to it. The governor, DeSantis, changed the rules around casinos so that Donald Trump could convert his Doral resort, which is in the city of Doral, Florida, so he could convert that into a casino and make money. I mean, he lost money on his previous casinos. I think he's the only guy in the history of the world to have lost money on casinos because he's such an incompetent. Remember when his dad had to go in and cash in and buy $1 million worth of chips and just walk out with the chips as a way of laundering $1 million into Donald's pocket? Anyhow, so DeSantis changes the parameters for how far away things have to be from each other. It just, he tweaked the rules perfectly to allow Donald Trump to turn Doral into a casino. So what did the Doral City Council do on Wednesday? They voted 4-0 to ban gambling in casinos in their town. It's got to be making Donald Trump crazy. Oh, and one last thing, and then I will continue picking up your calls. Tucker Carlson's Great American Fertility Crisis rolls on. He had Rebecca Heinrichs, the Hudson Institute, a right-wing think tank, on last night. She said the problem is cultural dogma that teaches young women and girls to monetize their talents and abilities. No, she's not talking about becoming hookers. She's talking about going to work, right? She's talking about just generally working. She said it's essential, Tucker. You could call them handmaids of capitalism. She criticized Biden for this plan to provide child care to millions of children. She says it's to get bodies into the workplace. Her advice to young women, get married and have children. That's where you're going to find great happiness, and you're going to have a healthier society if you do that. Tucker Carlson, champion of the new generation of 1950s women. I don't know, Phyllis Schlafly's of the world unite. It's pretty strange. Lou in Pueblo, Colorado. Hey, Lou, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, I was going to talk a little bit about oil, but just first, if I may, a quick comment. I own property in Illinois, got a lot of relatives. Illinois and California act like India does to the world. They educate more people than they need. So there is a large exodus of talented people. There's also a large inflow to replace them because they act as training centers for America.
Yeah.
So it's misrepresenting the facts.
Okay.
But,
thank you.
well, I was going to talk about oil. America uses about 1 billion gallons of oil a day, and I'm using gallons because you can visualize that. There's roughly 1 billion a day. 2/3 is burned as thermal uses, power plants, cars, heating oil, whatever, and 1/3 goes to plastics and chemicals. It took a century to build. It's a massive, huge infrastructure, and there isn't enough lithium on Earth to replace all these cars. So we're going to have to, we need to start right away because we're not going to replace this overnight, but rather than, dump oil and go to something else, we need to transition. And we're going to need hydrogen. We're going to need electric cars, whatever we can do, hamsters on, spinning wheels. We can't just go with a dump oil and switch to electric solution.
Did you see the article today about the new aluminum ion batteries?
There's sulfur, there's a bunch of battery technologies out there, but all I'm going to say on batteries is we've been in 1970, we were 20 years away from a cheap, fantastic battery, and I think we always will be at the rate we're going. I think we'll see supercapacitors instead.
Well, these aluminum batteries, these aluminum ion batteries work like lithium ions, except they charge 3 to 6 times faster, and they don't generate heat when they charge and discharge, so you don't need cooling fans like you do for lithium ion batteries. Therefore, they don't blow up and things like that. So it looks like it's a major breakthrough.
What's the life on them?
They said, the article that I read, and I saw a link to it over at Democratic Underground this morning, the article that I read said that they had run several thousand cycles on these batteries and seen no degradation in performance. So nobody knows what the lifespan of these things is.
And aluminum's cheap, so even if they don't last long.
Yeah, the world is filled with aluminum.
Yeah, whereas lithium's very difficult to recycle. That's an alternative, but I think we probably are better to go in 2 or 3 directions and then let the market decide which one works.
Yeah, well, we are. I mean, everybody and the brother is working on renewable technologies right now because it is the future, and it is necessary for us to have a future. So, Lou, thank you. Thanks for the call. We'll continue our conversations on Anything Goes Friday right after this break. It's coming up on 28 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program, the place where despair is not an option. Get out there, get active.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Back with your calls right after this. It is $5 Friday. Yeah, we're trying something new here today. It's the last day of the second week of our fund drive, our pledge drive, and let's really build something. Let's build a strong foundation for Free Speech TV. Let's really make this happen, which is why I'm calling this $5 Friday. When you give a one-time gift to Free Speech TV, that's great because that's, it's money in the checking account that helps pay the bills, and there's all these expenses associated with running a television network, electricity and staff and everything else. And even though Free Speech TV is run, really on a shoestring compared to big television, big commercial television networks, there are still a lot of expenses associated with getting the show from here to there to you. But when you give a regular monthly contribution, not only is it money in the bank, but it's also a predictable income stream that allows them to budget, to look out, 6 months in advance, a year in advance, and say, or 3 months in advance, whatever it may be, and say, okay, we know that we'll be able to make these expenses. We know that we can contract for this. We know that we can, bring on a new program now, whatever. I mean, you've got to be able to budget, right? You've got to be able to plan. It's just kind of, household 101, business 101. So $5 Friday today, my suggestion is just call Free Speech TV, even if you've called before, unless you're a regular monthly contributor already. But I mean, if you've made one-time gifts or whatever it may be, or if you've never made a gift, Call now, 877-378-8669. Call now and say, sign me up for $5 a month for the next year. Or sign me up for $5 a month until I tell you to stop. And let's build that foundation, because that is the base of the pyramid. You know, everything else rests on top of this regular, predictable monthly income, this regular, predictable monthly revenue that is really so critical to any kind of an organization. It's probably the single biggest challenge that nonprofits have. And I ran a nonprofit for 5 years, and I was on the board for 40 years. You know, the New England Salem Children's Village and the Hunter School. Louise and I started it back in 1978. And our biggest, and we were, you know, supported largely by donations. And every month I had to write the newsletter, and I was traveling all around giving talks and, you know, raising money and talking to donors and stuff. And the most difficult part was not knowing what I could expect when I was running that nonprofit. And that's also the most difficult part for Free Speech TV, is not knowing what to expect, is having to deal with things like their emergencies at the last minute sort of thing. And we can solve that problem for Free Speech TV, you and me, especially if you've never donated before, on this $5 Friday with a $5 a month commitment. That's all I'm asking for today. I mean, yes, I'll go through the list of all the premiums and all the goodies and things that you can get, you know, with larger amounts, donations, if you want any of those things. But I've been reciting those now for almost 2 weeks. I'm guessing you probably could, you know, recite them in your sleep. But today, let's make it $5 Friday. Let's build the base. Let's build a foundation on which this network can rest, and rest comfortably. I don't mean rest like relax. I mean, you know, be here, right? Be settled, be solid, have a firm foundation. All that build your home on a rock, not on sand stuff. So please call now, 877-378-8669 with your $5 a month commitment. For one-time gifts with larger amounts, $20, you get the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or the Take Action, Make History Pride sticker. $50, real change comes from the grassroots tote bags. $75, the collector's item Thom Hartmann mug. $100 gift, your choice of the Free Speech TV face mask or the Wilmington on Fire DVD. $120 gift, my book, The Hidden History of Oligarchy, signed by the author, or the Free Speech TV Justice t-shirt. $240 gift, the two-book set, Reclaiming Our Democracy book set, we're calling it, which is The Hidden History of American Monopolies and The Hidden History of American Oligarchy. Or you can join us for the Thom Hartmann meet and greet, kind of an off-the-record conversation on Zoom. $360, there's the Thom Hartmann University summer box set with the bumper our bumper sticker, the Free Speech TV bumper sticker, the Take Action, Make History Pride sticker, Free Speech TV change from the grassroots tote bag, the Wilmington on Fire DVD, and the collector's item Thom Hartmann mug. And with a $1,000 gift, we'll put you in the line to come here to Portland, which is a beautiful town. I know we've all seen the footage of about a 5-square-block area downtown where there was so much conflict, but you know, that's like a part of Portland that most Portland residents never see, never go. You know, this is a beautiful town. Some of the greatest restaurants everywhere, anywhere. So anyhow, you can come and visit us with a $1,000 gift. But bottom line, it's $5 Friday. Call now. It's just $5, right? And if we can get lots and lots of people to kick in $5, we can build that foundation. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. In addition to the free newsletter that we have over at ThomHartmann.com, which gives you literally a link to every story or article I've talked about throughout the day, every day, comes into your email box every day, there's no charge.
In addition to that, and my daily rants, which are free of advertising and free of charge over at HartmannReport.com, we also produce a weekly video. This week's video is about how power companies around the country, for-profit power companies, 100% of the time, these power companies around the country are making it harder and harder and more expensive for people to install solar in their homes. All kinds of ways of trying to block people from doing this. And increasingly, they're getting support from Republican politicians, both at the local and the state level. It's something that we really need to know about, we need to be paying attention to, and we need to be aggressively pushing back on. You can check it out over at ThomHartmann.com and at HartmannReport.com.
Welcome back to Anything Goes Friday here on the Thom Hartmann Program, taking your calls. And Kurt in Akron, Ohio. Hey, Kurt, what's on your mind today?
Hey, hi, Tom. How are you this morning or this afternoon here in Ohio?
Yeah, well, I'm fine. What's up?
That's good. Well, you know, long-time listener, maybe 9th or 10th time caller. First of all, I work in healthcare, okay, and I can't wait for your hidden history of healthcare to come out.
Yeah, it'll be out in a few weeks.
Well, that's cool.
Maybe a few months, but yeah.
Well, hey, whatever. It is what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, because I work in healthcare, I actually work for a private company here in Akron, Ohio, who specializes in free service through a contract with area hospitals to help self-pay patients as a free service provided by the hospital to look at Medicaid eligibility. I've been doing it for 20 years, so I kind of know.
Medicaid, this would be low-income individuals.
Low-income individuals. So I kind of know what I'm talking about with Medicaid, having done it for 20 years.
Okay.
Yesterday, I went and spoke to a gentleman from Texas, and first of all, I had to find out if he was going to be going back to Texas or if he was staying here in Ohio, because obviously if he's going back to Texas, he's not eligible for Ohio Medicaid.
Right.
I explained to him the ins and outs of how expanded Medicaid works and everything, because as a result of the Affordable Care Act since 2014. And I'm using Affordable Care Act the whole time. I'm not using Obamacare. I'm using the term Affordable Care Act. He's like, well, that's a pretty good program. Why haven't we heard about this? And I'm thinking, what?
Mm-hmm.
So if you call it Obamacare, they hate it. But if you call it the Affordable Care Act, they love it.
Right.
But what happened was, he goes, well, I'm a Trump supporter, and that's a really good idea. Who came up with that? Well, I wanted to say, first of all, the Republican Party in 1992 did to counter Bill and Hillary Clinton's.
That's right. It was the Heritage Foundation, actually. And then Mitt Romney adopted it and put it into place in Massachusetts. They called it Romneycare. It's still there.
So then I said, well, you would call it Obamacare, because that's when it went into effect. He wanted to get some kind of a universal health care coverage. He had to compromise, blah, blah, blah. He goes, oh, I hated that guy, Obama, but, well, I think I might change my mind a little bit because he did something good for the people. Wow. So my point is, and I have other stories like that, too, where a guy was wearing a MAGA hat one time, and his wife gave birth, and the family itself was not eligible for Medicaid based on family size and income at 138% of the federal poverty level, but the baby would be eligible at 206% based on the size of the family and the income. And I told the guy this because he was in the room, and he goes, well, a really good idea. What's that called? And I told him about the CHIP program and everything. He goes, well, who came up with that great idea? I said, Hillary Clinton. He goes, oh, I hate Hillary Clinton, but she actually did something good.
There you go.
So my point is, when you get people in a vulnerable state, and if you actually can explain things in simplistic terms, they might actually learn themselves something, and they might actually change their mind. Not always, but I just happen to be lucky with those two people. But it just amazes me how ignorant, and it goes back to that gentleman, Mark, that you talked to earlier from Chicago. If you're getting all of your news and your sources from right-wing news sources or anything like that, and it goes through with the left wing too, don't get me wrong, the left wing can be like that too. Basically what it comes down to is, but I will say this, I have listened to, say, you or Randy or Stephanie and I've listened to Newsmax and OAN because I like to be able to know what the enemy's thinking. One thing I'll say about our side is you guys cite your sources. The right side does not.
Right. And when I'm wrong, I'll correct myself on the air.
And that's it. You're not full of yourself. You're not so full of yourself and have such a super ego that it's your right way or it's no way. And how dare you correct me? Right. Because I've had run-ins with right-wingers before, too, who I've corrected. And I've actually been banned from shows locally here. We have a local talk station that's pretty conservative. And because I've corrected their statements because I had the facts, I'm not allowed to call in anymore.
I'm not surprised, Kurt. Which is so weird because I actually encourage conservative callers. You know, if somebody calls in and tells Joyce that they want to disagree with me, that they're conservative, they literally are the next call that I take, even if there's 20 people stacked up behind them. Because number one, I think it makes entertaining, media. It makes good radio. But number two, it helps us all to understand the issues better, to actually have a discussion or even a debate about them. And so it's one of the things that, we're on Sirius XM and there's a couple of conservative channels and then there's the progressive channel and they're all kind of lumped together. And so we get a lot of people who are doing channel surfing there. And it's great. It's absolutely great to have a diversity of opinion on this program, or at least a diversity of people that I can either talk back to or talk back at or whatever.
But you know what? You're respectful. You're respectful about it.
Well, I try to be. I mean, I can get snotty.
And the last thing, and then the last thing real quickly, Tucker Carlson's fertility idea that you were talking about. Get rid of trickle-down economics so the wife can stay home or the mother can stay home. You can live on a one-income family.
Yeah, this should be a decision that families can make and individuals can make. It shouldn't be, the consequence of social engineering or social policy or Tucker Carlson's opinion du jour about, the latest and greatest way to keep women barefoot and pregnant. I'm with you. Kurt, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Kenyatta in Los Angeles. Hey, Kenyatta, what's on your mind today?
Mr. Hartmann, happy Friday to you.
Thank you.
And I wanted to comment because Mark, the conservative caller, has apparently inspired a lot of people. And I want to kind of, be the devil's advocate and say that I actually thought Mark said one or two things that made a little sense to me. However, it always fascinates me to see European Americans pontificating on the black experience.
Yeah, exactly.
And it really fascinates me, and we remain a country, Tom, that concentrates on the what but never the why. For instance, no place on the planet Earth, are there any manufacturers that are black people of guns or bullets? Yet you can go to Detroit, East St. Louis, Los Angeles, Compton, Newark, New Jersey. I've been to all of those places, and there are guns all over the place because they're pointing them at each other. We have serialized guns are serialized. You have to have a background check. How did all those guns get in those neighborhoods? We never talk about the black people, and of course it was a not so silent dog whistle, Chicago.
Right.
And the first thing that does is put black people on the defensive because they're talking about the what but never the why. Why is that? How did all those guns get there? You could do the same thing with the border wall. These people or the cartels are bringing drugs in and blah, 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 blah. Why is there such an appetite for drugs in this society? Never the why. And then, lastly, I wanted to tell you anecdotally and somewhat humorously about an experiment or an experience and an experiment as an author yourself. And I'm trying to grow up and be like you in that way. And I'm not being funny when I say that.
No, I love reading your stuff over at opednews.com and other places that you've published at Kenyatta. You're doing great.
Well,
I encourage people to check it out.
That's flattery I don't deserve, but thank you. But anyways, listen, I know that you often, because a person that's in their head all the time, I know that you do sometimes experiments with people, social experiments, and I wanted to tell you about what they call a microaggression that I recently experienced. About 24 months ago, about 2 years ago, suddenly I noticed that wherever I went, whether it be a convenience store or the grocery store, people would look at me and they'd say, how are you, boss? And I'm like, because I was taught if you don't know a man's name, you call him sir. Or if you don't know a lady's name, you call them ma'am. And I kept wondering about this. So a few days ago, I go to the grocery store, and there are two white guys in front of me. And there's this very young assistant manager at this very large grocery store chain. I know you're familiar with it. I won't say it on the air because I know you've been to Southern California many times. And the first guy's there, and the young man says, how are you today, sir? And did his thing. And then the next guy goes, how are you, sir? I get there, and he goes, how are you, boss? And I stopped, and I didn't frame off. I waited until the line cleared, and I said, young man, his name was Caleb. I said, let me explain something to you. Do you realize that term was something that's a racist term? And he looked at me with absolute surprise. He was a very young man in his early 20s. And I said, do you realize that's something that black people had to say to European Americans for a long time? They had to refer to them as boss. And he looked at me, but here's the good news, Tom, and I gave him an education. I went back a couple of days later, maybe yesterday or the day before, and he said, sir, I want to thank you so much for, I never knew that. I never knew that. I was unaware of that. And this is the type of stuff that if you are black in this country, you deal with every day.
Yeah, I believe
it doesn't have to be George Floyd. It's just stuff, Tom.
Yeah. I totally get it, Kenyatta. I mean, I don't because it's not my lived experience, but intellectually I totally get it. And, and hopefully more and more of our, particularly our white listeners do. Kenyatta, thanks for the call. It's always nice to hear from you. Good talking to you. We'll be back. It's 26 and a half minutes past the hour. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Anything Goes Friday here on the Thom Hartmann Program, your media support group for We the People. We'll be back with your calls. And welcome back. James in Spokane, Washington. Hey, James, what's on your mind today?
Shalom, you guys.
Yeah. Shabbat shalom. Well, when the sun goes down, anyway.
Thank you for that tradition, too. I just want to point out a couple of simple truths first, though. If you're not progressive, you're regressive. I mean, it is that simple. And billionaires are psychotic, every one of them. You might not be psychotic wanting it or acquiring it.
I'm not sure you can generalize quite like that, James, but there are a number of people, I think, in that category who got there by virtue of their heads being scrambled somewhat.
I don't know.
I'm not sure you could say that of Richard Branson, for example, although I don't know him personally. So I'm just generally opposed to generalizing.
It's a lot of power for a single individual, anyway.
It is, and it shouldn't be, and that's a matter of tax policy, basically.
And one more simple truth before I mention the reason for the call: World War II never ended, Tom. Just as far as I heard yesterday, maybe you can verify this. Arms production didn't even slow down after World War II in America.
I know.
That's insane. I mean, it's just. It just became a war of conquest and gaining tribute.
What happened was once we defeated the Nazis and Tojo, the Japanese and German fascists and Italian and Spanish fascists, then the next boogeyman became, or the next bad guys became the communists. And so you had the whole Red Scare stuff in the 50s, and of course we had unleashed the atomic genie, so we had to keep up with the Russians, and they had to keep up with us, and here we are.
Yeah.
So you called about Joe Manchin?
Yeah, being a good Democrat in the form of Bill Clinton, because I'd like to remind everyone that Bill Clinton signed NAFTA into law.
Yeah, but
rid
he
of the
didn't negotiate it.
Glass-Steagall
You know, it
Act.
was Reagan and Bush who negotiated it.
But
And
he
the World
signed
Trade
the deal.
Organization, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade that brought us the World Trade Organization. Both of those
Thank you.
programs came out of the Reagan-Bush administrations. But yes, you're right. Clinton enthusiastically endorsed them.
He got rid of the Glass-Steagall Act.
Yep. Well, Congress got
Introduced
rid of
the
it, but yes,
commodities-
he signed it in 1999. Or maybe it was 2000.
Thank you.
Yep.
Introduced the Commodities Futures Modernization Act. I mean, all this just set us up for such a great century for the blue-collar worker.
Yeah.
Elevated China into the World Trade Organization with most favored nation status.
Yep.
You know, I mean, you know.
But let's be very
Joe
clear,
Manchin-
James. There was only one party during that entire period of time, from the mid-'80s through the early 2000s, that had members who were loudly speaking out against this, against what Bill Clinton was going along with. And these, as I pointed out, these were all policies that originated within the Republican Party. There was only one party that had people speaking out against that, and that was the Democratic Party. You know, Sherrod Brown has been talking about, the Democratic senator from Ohio has been talking about this stuff forever. Bernie Sanders has been talking about this stuff forever. Elizabeth Warren has been
That's
talking
what
about this
scares
stuff
me,
forever.
Tom. This stuff is set into stone to such a degree. 40 years of Reaganomics, there are just as many complicit Democrats as Republicans.
No,
Nobody's
there
going to
are
jail.
not. There's nothing close to as many complicit Democrats as there are Republicans. But it is a challenge for the Democratic Party, and you're seeing that played out right now with Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema and some of these others. You know, and I think we just need to tell the truth about it, but we also need to do something about it, and that has to do with getting active, getting inside your local Democratic Party, and making things happen. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. Over at TomHartmann.com, we have our newsletter, our regular newsletter that Sue puts together every day. It's got a link in it to every single article that I talk about on the air. So you can see, you know, the backup for everything that I have to say. It's free. You know, there's some ads in it that just, you know, pay for it, basically. But that's it. There's that. And then, of course, over at HartmannReport.com, also no charge, there is our daily rant. So those are two things on the internet that we have. We also, you know, periodically put up videos specifically for the people who are supporters of our program. And you can find our most recent one. It's about guns. This sheriff in Volusia County, the sheriff deputy there, asking the media, you know, where have we gone wrong when a 14-year-old girl and a 12-year-old boy are having a shootout with deputies? And Texas passing this bizarre new gun law. Anyhow, it's all over at TomHartmann.com. You can find it right there. Check it out. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Bill in Clifton, New Jersey. Hey, Bill, what's on your mind today?
Hey, how you doing?
Good. What's up?
Oh, good. Yeah, I first want to mention there was some worry at one point that because of what the Republicans are doing to themselves, that the Republican Party might just go away. And what will we do with one-party rule? I don't think it makes a difference if we have a democracy. But 1,000 years of Roman republic, there were no political parties. There were philosophies, and sometimes senators would meet on an ad hoc basis to pass something, but there were no political parties. The Iroquois Confederacy.
Well, hang on just a second.
political
To the
parties.
extent that there were political parties in ancient Rome, and I am forgetting the title of
The
this.
populares, you mean? And
Yeah, but the parties were basically cults of personality. They were focused around individuals. But I get what you're saying.
Right.
Anyhow, continue.
It was more like saying I'm a liberal and I'm a conservative. There were those who were more for the rich and some who were for the plebeians.
Or I'm with Nero, or I'm with Caligula.
Right. So we don't need political parties, which is why Washington, who was loved Roman history, didn't want them either. But the political parties started in England in the 14th century with the Whigs, and otherwise they weren't necessary. So everybody, calm down. The other thing I was calling about, though, as far as the filibuster, for there to be a filibuster, there has to be a minority in the Senate. There is no minority in the Senate because it's 50-50. Right?
No, because the tie-breaking vote, according to the Constitution, goes to whoever's the vice president. So,
yeah, for a vote.
Yeah.
For some votes.
So there's a Democratic majority in the Senate, a one-vote majority.
But that has nothing to do. That has nothing to do with the actual senators who vote on a regular basis.
Okay, I think we're splitting hairs here, Bill. What's the point?
The point is, if there's no minority that needs a voice with the filibuster, you can't have the filibuster.
Oh. Yeah, well, I mean, this whole idea that the filibuster's there to protect the minority is crazy. I mean, that's not what democracy is. Democracy is the majority rules within in our country within the constraints of the Constitution. We have a constitutionally limited democratic republic, elected, a representative democratic republic.
Right. I mean, I'm all for the minority voice getting an extra bite at the apple to make their claim.
Yeah, let's have the Jimmy Stewart filibuster. I'm with you.
Right, but when it's done, and they have to vote. Period. Yeah. None of that's in the Constitution.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm with you, Bill. And in fact, the founding generation would have been very opposed to it. Peter in Oak Park, Illinois. Hey, Peter, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. You talk a lot on the show about far-right and conservative media outlets with their misinformation, and I just had an interesting exchange on social media the other day. I never try and engage with Trumpies and the like on social media just because there's no point. But I saw a post that was kind of obnoxious and from somebody that should have known better, and he's got a pretty big following on Instagram, and it was a mashup, chopped up videos of Biden with pseudo racist it was taken all out of context. So, sure. He had a lot of people on the comments saying, yeah, he's such a racist and all this and
Peter,
that.
Peter, we just have 25 seconds to the end of this hour. You want to tighten your story up a little bit?
Yeah, so I was trying to engage and find out what these people jumped on me and said that this guy must watch CNN and all this, and so I asked a couple of them, well, where do you get your information from? And one particularly smug individual was saying it's stupid because it's so easy to get good information. I said, well, where do you get yours from? And her reply was the Holy Bible, and then she rattled off a bunch of other far-right conservative outlets, and I was a little astonished at that.
Yeah. Well, people tend to live in bubbles that reinforce their understanding of themselves and their relationship to the world. It is human nature, but it's being exploited badly. Peter, thank you for the call.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More information at HelloFresh.com, code TOM. CB Distillery for sleeping and pain relief. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. Annie's Kit Clubs, creativity delivered right to your door. More info is available at annieskitclubs.com/Tom. EasyFlow, personal air filtration system. Fresh air anywhere. More info at easyflowusa.com, code TOM. Masterclass with world-class instructors. More info at masterclass.com/Hartman. And Dinovite, only the best all-natural pet supplements. More info at dinovite.com.
$5 Friday. Yeah, we're trying something new here today. It's the last day of the second week of our fund drive, our pledge drive, and let's really build something. Let's build a strong foundation for Free Speech TV. Let's really make this happen, which is why I'm calling this $5 Friday. When you give a one-time gift to Free Speech TV, that's great, because that's, it's money in the checking account that helps pay the bills, and there's all these expenses associated with running a television network, electricity and staff and everything else. And even though Free Speech TV is run, really on a shoestring compared to big television, big commercial television networks, there are still a lot of expenses associated with getting the show from here to there to you. But when you give a regular monthly contribution, not only is it money in the bank, but it's also a predictable income stream that allows them to budget, to look out, 6 months in advance, a year in advance, and say, or 3 months in advance, whatever it may be, and say, okay, we know that we'll be able to make these expenses. We know that we can contract for this. We know that we can, bring on a new program now, whatever. I mean, you've got to be able to budget, right? You've got to be able to plan. It's just kind of, household 101, business 101. So $5 Friday today, my suggestion is just call Free Speech TV, even if you've called before, unless you're a regular monthly contributor already. But I mean, if you've made one-time gifts or whatever it may be, or if you've never made a gift, call now, 877-378-8669. Call now and say, sign me up for $5 a month for the next year. Or sign me up for $5 a month until I tell you to stop. And let's build that foundation, because that is the base of the pyramid. Everything else rests on top of this regular, predictable monthly income, this regular, predictable monthly revenue that is really so critical to any kind of an organization. It's probably the single biggest challenge that nonprofits have. And I ran a nonprofit for 5 years, and I was on the board for 40 years. The New England Salem Children's Village and the Hunter School. Louise and I started it back in 1978. And our biggest, and we were, supported largely by donations. And every month I had to write the newsletter, and I was traveling all around giving talks and raising money and talking to donors and stuff. And the most difficult part was not knowing what I could expect when I was running that nonprofit. And that's also the most difficult part for Free Speech TV, is not knowing what to expect, is having to deal with things like there are emergencies at the last minute sort of thing. And we can solve that problem for Free Speech TV, you and me, especially if you've never donated before, on this $5 Friday with a $5 a month commitment. That's all I'm asking for today. I mean, yes, I'll go through the list of all the premiums and all the goodies and things that you can get, with larger amounts, donations, if you want any of those things. But I've been reciting those now for almost 2 weeks. I'm guessing you probably could, recite them in your sleep. But today, let's make it $5 Friday. Let's build the base. Let's build a foundation on which this network can rest, and rest comfortably. I don't mean rest like relax. I mean, be here, right? Be settled, be solid, have a firm foundation. All that, build your home on a rock, not on sand stuff. So please call now, 877-378-8669 with your $5 a month commitment. For one-time gifts with larger amounts, $20, you get the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or the Take Action, Make History Pride sticker. $50, real change comes from the grassroots tote bags. $75, the collector's item Thom Hartmann mug. $100 gift, your choice of the Free Speech TV face mask or the Wilmington on Fire DVD. $120 gift, my book, The Hidden History of Oligarchy, signed by the author, or the Free Speech TV Justice t-shirt. $240 gift, the two-book set, Reclaiming Our Democracy book set, we're calling it, which is The Hidden History of American Monopolies and The Hidden History of American Oligarchy. Or you can join us for the Thom Hartmann meet and greet, kind of an off-the-record conversation on Zoom. $360. There's the Thom Hartmann University Summer Box Set with the bumper our bumper sticker, the Free Speech TV bumper sticker, the Take Action, Make History Pride sticker, Free Speech TV Change from the Grassroots tote bag, the Wilmington on Fire DVD, and the collector's item Thom Hartmann mug. And with a $1,000 gift, we'll put you in the line to come here to Portland, which is a beautiful town. I know we've all seen the footage of about a 5-square-block area downtown where there was so much conflict, but you know, that's like a part of Portland that most Portland residents never see, never go. You know, this is a beautiful town. Some of the greatest restaurants everywhere, anywhere. So anyhow, you can come and visit us with a $1,000 gift. But bottom line, it's $5 Friday. Call now. It's just $5, right? And if we can get lots and lots of people to kick in $5, we can build that foundation. So please call now, 877-378-8669.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So Senate Democrats are saying that they want to subpoena Bill Barr and Jeff Sessions on this Department of Justice pursuit of these, you know, Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell. Apparently, so far, all we know is these two Democrats who Trump was aggressively tweeting about, these two people, during the time that the DOJ was surveilling them. And if they won't testify, they could be held in contempt of Congress. Although, you know, when was the last time anybody went to jail for that? Meanwhile, People of Praise, this is this little kind of Catholic Christian cult that Amy Coney Barrett was raised in down in Louisiana. They're going through a real crisis. It's all over the front page of the Washington Post. People of Praise, a Christian group tied to Justice Amy Coney Barrett, this is the headline, faces reckoning over sexual misconduct allegations. This is one of the problems in cults, right? And the Biden administration is trying to bring back wild areas. I thought that was another good one. Darnella Fraser, the young woman, as I recall, she was like 16 or 17 at the time, who had the presence of mind to stand there for the full actually her clip runs more than 9 minutes, and videotape the murder of George Floyd. She just won what's essentially an honorary Pulitzer Prize from the Pulitzer Prize group, you know, which is a big deal. And Republicans are saying that maybe David Bossie is speaking on behalf of them. The Republican National Committee says, I'm not sure we want to do debates anymore, these presidential debates and all these other kind of debates. Yeah, it's like, you know, we don't have any policies to run on, so why should we debate policy? And they used to at least pretend, you know, I mean, they used to pretend, right? Reagan would get up there and, well, you know, if you get the rich people a lot of money, they will create new jobs. They'll put that money into factories, and it'll trickle down to the average person. They're not even trying this anymore. I mean, it's literally, they're not even trying it anymore. So, anyhow, let's pick up your phone calls here. It's Anything Goes Friday. Arthur in Chicago. Hey, Arthur, what's on your mind today?
Well, Tom, something's been kind of stuck in the back of my head, including last week. I ended your show last week. We had a good little conversation and a good laugh. Now, the 25 states that decided they were going to discontinue the weekly stimulus funds to their unemployed.
Right.
They're going to discontinue those to try to get people back to work. What is going? I don't understand what. Maybe when Congressman Rokan's back on, or some other politician who maybe know this, maybe you know it. What is the flow of that money? What's going to happen to that money that they're not giving to their unemployed?
You're talking if I remember the numbers correctly, and I'm doing this from memory, so, you know, fact check me, please. But my recollection is it's $22.1 billion that those states are going to give up. that money would have stimulated their economies to that tune and would have helped them, recover faster. But Republicans tend to want poverty in their states. They tend to want their people to be, basically uneducated and uninformed. And you just look at the Republican-controlled states and you see an awful lot of that. And where that money goes, it just stays in the Treasury. It's money that's been appropriated and never spent. And that's, in fact, that's when you hear about the negotiations that are going on right now with the Republicans. Mitt Romney was out there last night. We're going to work out a package here for infrastructure, and the Republicans are like, oh yeah, we can make it $1 trillion, and we're going to take $600 billion of that from money that's already been appropriated. This is part of that money.
Okay, so it was appropriated, but it wasn't given to the states.
The states haven't claimed
it. Wasn't in the states' coffers,
right?
Where they would have to return it to the United States Treasury.
That's correct.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. I was going to say, okay, they're not going to. Do they have to return it, or are they just going to do what they want to do with that money since they're not going to give it to the people? And one more quick thing, and I'll let you get to the next caller. Louis DeJoy at the post office. I think the whole post office management needs to be restructured. I don't know how that's going to happen. It probably won't. But whose decision was it to take apart and destroy those mail processing machines, which were worth millions of dollars?
Yeah.
Was it DeJoy's decision? Was it Trump's? Was it somebody in between? And why haven't they been held accountable? That was the people's property.
I agree.
That wasn't their property.
I agree. I had thought that Louis DeJoy was responsible for destroying all, 600 of them or 800 of them, something like that, of those machines?
Whatever it was.
Yeah.
We're talking millions and millions of dollars of the people's property.
Hundreds of millions,
So why
perhaps.
hasn't the federal government sued whoever's decision that was? He implemented it. But why hasn't the federal government sued to get those machines?
Because it's not technically federal property. The U.S. Postal Service, the USPS, is it's a weird kind of corporation, sort of like Amtrak, that is not entirely owned by the government, but has a relationship with the government. It's kind of it's a weird little hybrid, and they don't use any. And by the way, this has been altered a number of times over the years, but I believe it was back in the 70s that Congress passed a law saying that the post office could no longer use any federal money, and so they have to be entirely supported by the sale of stamps. And
then they kneecapped that with
that's right.
That law that came out saying that they have to have enough money for health care.
Prepay the health care benefits 75 years in advance. Yeah, and then
had to be a big boon for the insurance company. I know that was a great boon for the insurance company, wasn't it?
Well, they're not. The insurance companies aren't getting that money yet. It's sitting in a trust fund. There's something like $35-40 billion just sitting in a trust fund that the post office has. That when they privatize it, will go to FedEx. I've got something that I needed to ship to a friend of mine who lives in Germany. And so I went on the Postal Service's website to order some international envelopes and stamps, And the international envelopes, the mailing envelopes, now have the FedEx logo on them. FedEx, the company that doesn't have a union, right? And it's like, when the hell did that happen? I have no idea. But it's like, what? So this is, now my understanding is, I saw this in a news story about, I don't know, maybe a month ago, and I did not know this prior to that, and I can't give you any more detail than this, but that story that I read said that a number of those machines have been removed before DeJoy took over. I do not know who preceded him, and I probably should, but I'm sorry, I'm not that much of a scholar on the history of the Postal Service. But he's apparently not alone on this, and somebody cutting deals with FedEx, and I mean, there's some skeezy stuff going on.
It always is with Republicans. It always is.
There you go.
Always. They're not doing skeezy stuff. They're lying, propaganda, everything. It's always something negative with them, except for corporations and rich people.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're all enthusiastic about giving tax breaks, but outside of that, yes. Arthur, spot on. Thank you very much for the call, and thanks for listening to WCPT. Larry in Elkhart, Kansas. Hey, Larry, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I was watching Unfit, the Psychology of Donald Trump last night, which is brilliant, I think, and I wanted more, so I went to Fahrenheit 11/9, and there was a bit in there about President Obama going to Flint, Michigan, for a rally to get things done. And one of the first things he did was get a glass of water, and he didn't even take a sip out of it. He touched his lips. That happened twice.
Mm-hmm.
And then...
Well, would you drink Flint water back in the day? I mean, that was when you had the governor of Michigan and the head of the Michigan Public Health Department lying about this, and everybody knew they were lying.
Yeah, exactly. And so the next thing that happened was a news conference with Snyder. And the opposite of anything happened. It was shocking how disappointed the people were at the president's response. And nothing happened. I don't know if anything is. I mean, they wanted, new pipes, et cetera, and so forth.
Yeah.
I don't even know if any of that.
They are. There's a major effort underway in Flint, Michigan, to repair those pipes. It has been for a while now. Jennifer Granholm.
Like how while? How a while?
I'm sorry, I don't know. I haven't lived in Michigan since 1978, and so I haven't followed it that closely. But I know that this governor has been very committed to doing that within the constraints of whatever budget she has to work with. And the budgets, of course, are passed by Republicans in the House and Senate because they control both chambers in Michigan. So it's a tough one.
Brother Rick should be in jail, but oh well.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And finally, speaking of Germany and where you used to live, for another time, another side of you, I'm really enjoying The Prophet's Way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's just a kind of a collection of diaries from much, much earlier in my life. Thank you, Larry. It's great to hear from you. I appreciate the call. We'll be right back. It's 16 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Back with you. More of your calls on Anything Goes Friday, whatever's on your mind.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Sean is like, we haven't gotten any UFO calls today. And it's certainly a good week for it, right? I mean, all this stuff. I'm thinking they're out there. I really am starting to think that. And welcome back. Let's see here, Nancy in Chihuahua, Washington. Hey, Nancy, thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
Hey, okay, two things. Why don't the progressive billionaires make a super PAC to A, buy back like Mansion Cinema and any other Democrats that the Koch brothers have bought, and B, to start what you were talking about, more progressive media on radio and TV. And the other thing
I do not know the answer to that question, Nancy. Assuming that you don't mean it rhetorically. If you mean it as a serious question, I
mean it serious.
I've been in the room when progressive billionaires have been pitched on this stuff, and there are some very good progressive billionaires who are doing a lot of great stuff, actually. But none of them have stepped up to buy major media or national media. There are some regional media outlets that are controlled by or owned by very wealthy progressives. So, anyway.
Okay, and the other thing is if corporations are people and money is free speech, right, and the average personal donation is $25, why should they have more free speech than the average person?
Because the Supreme Court said so. Because conservatives on the Supreme Court said so.
Can we make a case to bring to the Supreme Court asking that?
No, because they've already decided it, number one. And number two, the conservatives on the Supreme Court are not, under any circumstances, going to roll any of that back.
Yeah, well, I figured
it's going to be a hell of a challenge. It's going to take legislation at the very least, and an amendment to this U.S. Constitution at the most. The For the People Act, for example, has a ban, more or less, regulates, shall we say, dark money. That will almost certainly be appealed to the Supreme Court, and I'm not sure that it'll survive an appeal to the Supreme Court.
But if we buy back Mansion and Cinema, they might be able to get rid of the filibuster, and then Biden can pack the court.
Yeah, if we had the resources. I'm not sure it's that simple. I mean, with Cinema, it may well be. I'm still scratching my head about her, and I came up with this metaphor a week or so ago about, she's just this generation's Roseanne Barr.
just, you know, the perpetual attention seeker. But with Joe Manchin, I think that he's dealing with a state where, you know, it's one of the whitest, it's the third whitest state in the United States. It's a small state. It only has a few million people, mostly white people. It's got, you know, they voted for Trump over Joe Biden by almost 40 points. And so he's got some complex politics that he's got to be considering. That is not the case with Kyrsten Sinema. I think that she's just grandstanding. But then, you know, we're also hearing
she ran as a spoiler.
No, I think that she's doing.
You know, like she's a Republican that ran as a Democrat just to obstruct.
No, I think that she's trying to be John McCain, the guy who occasionally bucked his own party, and everybody thought of him as a maverick. He was a good guy, but you know, John McCain bucked his own party when his own party was nuts. And Kyrsten Sinema's bucking her own party just to be able to say, you know, like with her famous thumbs down on the $15 minimum wage, just to get the publicity. She's not sophisticated enough to understand the difference between John McCain and what she thinks she's trying to do. That's my guess. I mean, I don't know her, so I don't really know. Nancy, thank you for the call. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. We're available on SiriusXM, Free Speech TV, Pacifica, commercial stations nationwide, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, on the Thom Hartmann app, and you can even tell your smart speaker to listen to the Thom Hartmann Program. Hey, we have a couple of special things over at ThomHartmann.com and HartmannReport.com. Of course, at HartmannReport.com, every single day, well, 6 days a week, Sunday accepted, I write a rant about an issue of the day that I think is important. Louise and I work on these together. We get them out typically around 6 in the morning Pacific time. And you'll find that at HartmannReport.com. It's free. You can sign up for it. There's no ads, whatever. But also over at ThomHartmann.com, we have a video every week for the supporters of our program. And the one this week is about how Wisconsin is trying to remove, in fact, they just got permission from their Supreme Court to remove 188,000 people from the voting rolls because they haven't voted in 4 years. This highlights the importance of getting to know who is your state representative, who is your state senator, and communicating with them regularly. It's all over at HartmannReport.com and ThomHartmann.com. And welcome back. Anything Goes Friday. Rich in Indianapolis. Hey, Rich, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Thank you so much. And may I please a shout out to Kenyatta. Years and years ago on my very first call, he was the conversation just before me, and your conversation with himself really calmed me down. And I had a conversation that wasn't overridden by stage fright.
Yeah, he's a brilliant man.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to let folks let us have an informational moment of how to listen to the show. When I had Free Speech TV, I always had a pad and paper, and I always took notes. Now that I don't have free speech, I am not hands-free as I'm listening to you here, but always take notes, because if you're using Tom's show as infotainment, well, good on you for wanting to listen to something worthwhile, but take notes and become
Well, let me make it easier for you,
resonator.
Rich. Sue Nethercutt, who's on our staff, she listens to the show and she finds every single article or topic that I talk about and finds links to stories that are background documentation, and she plugs it into a daily newsletter that we send out 5 days a week. It's absolutely free.
I didn't know.
There are some little ads that run down the side, which is how we pay for it. And it's just for the stuff that you would hear the advertisements for if you listen to one of our commercial stations. But they're not intrusive, and it's not it's not in your face or anything. And we've got quite a mailing list, and so it's kind of Sue's Daily Stack is really worth checking out. You just go to ThomHartmann.com. And it's easy enough to find, but if you just sit on the website for, I think, about a minute, a pop-up will come up that says, fill in your email address here to subscribe. So, anyhow.
Brilliant solution.
Yeah.
it does
Well,
work.
the reason that I'm calling is that there's knuckleheads in Indiana. Duh.
Surprise.
And what they're doing is pushing back on the mask mandate, and they think that they're being patriotic citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in the state lawmakers huddle. You know, I don't know what that's called downtown there, but the thing that they're doing, I would say, can be characterized as faux intellectualism. And one of the ways that to have a faux intellectual conversation is easiest to have is when you're not in possession of your faculties.
Mm-hmm.
And there are three things that were created that were noted on the return of vets from Korea, where the guys that were getting captured and worked over to sign confessions and etc.
Mm-hmm.
The physical, or excuse me, the mental condition of these guys was listed as a disability, and then that went to a dependency, and then that went to a dread.
Right.
So you've got the crisis of being a prisoner of war, and they're working you over to exhaustion, and that creates the debility. And then as they're terrorizing you harder, you go into survival and you get Stockholmed, which isn't a term that showed up until the 1970s,
right,
when that particular thing was able to be seen. And then there's always the constant condition dread. So they called that the 3 Ds. And they developed, as a response to that, SEER training: survival, evade, resist, escape, SEER, S-E-R-E. And then they deconstructed SEER training and they used it at Gitmo on detainees.
So they reverse engineered it, basically.
Right, right. So what you really need to know here is that we are dealing with monsters as a taproot back to, and complicit idiots who are willing to, in a zero-sum game, cynical version of worldview.
Yeah, I totally get it, Rich. Let me give you another data point real quick. The Congress, I don't know if this is Pelosi's decision or who, but Congress has decided that if you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask anymore. There are over 100 Republicans in the House of Representatives who refuse to acknowledge whether they've been vaccinated or not. It's bizarre. Rich, thanks for the call.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I mean, just think about that for a minute. 100 Republicans who refuse to say whether, I'm guessing most of them have been vaccinated because they're not idiots, or maybe they are. I don't know. It is $5 Friday. Yeah, we're trying something new here today. It's the last day of the second week of our fund drive, our pledge drive, and let's really build something. Let's build a strong foundation for Free Speech TV. Let's really make this happen, which is why I'm calling this $5 Friday. When you give a one-time gift to Free Speech TV, that's great, because that's, it's money in the checking account that helps pay the bills, and there's all these expenses associated with running a television network, electricity and staff and everything else. And even though Free Speech TV is run, really on a shoestring compared to big television, big commercial television networks, there are still a lot of expenses associated with getting the show from here to there to you. But when you give a regular monthly contribution, not only is it money in the bank, but it's also a predictable income stream that allows them to budget, to look out, 6 months in advance, a year in advance, and say, or 3 months in advance, whatever it may be, and say, okay, we know that we'll be able to make these expenses. We know that we can contract for this. We know that we can, bring on a new program now, whatever. I mean, you've got to be able to budget, right? You've got to be able to plan. It's just kind of, household 101, business 101. So $5 Friday today, my suggestion is just call Free Speech TV, even if you've called before, unless you're a regular monthly contributor already. But I mean, if you've made one-time gifts or whatever it may be, or if you've never made a gift, call now, 877-378-8669. Call now and say, sign me up for $5 a month for the next year. Or sign me up for $5 a month until I tell you to stop. And let's build that foundation, because that is the base of the pyramid. You know, everything else rests on top of this regular, predictable monthly income, this regular, predictable monthly revenue that is really so critical to any kind of an organization. It's probably the single biggest challenge that nonprofits have. And I ran a nonprofit for 5 years, and I was on the board for 40 years. You know, the New England Salem Children's Village and the Hunter School. Louise and I started it back in 1978. And our biggest, and we were, you know, supported largely by donations. And every month I had to write the newsletter, and I was traveling all around giving talks and, you know, raising money and talking to donors and stuff. And the most difficult part was not knowing what I could expect when I was running that nonprofit. And that's also the most difficult part for Free Speech TV, is not knowing what to expect, is having to deal with things like their emergencies at the last minute sort of thing. And we can solve that problem for Free Speech TV, you and me, especially if you've never donated before, on this $5 Friday with a $5 a month commitment. That's all I'm asking for today. I mean, yes, I'll go through the list of all the premiums and all the goodies and things that you can get, you know, with larger amounts donations if you want any of those things. But I've been reciting those now for almost 2 weeks. I'm guessing you probably could, you know, recite them in your sleep. But today, let's make it $5 Friday. Let's build the base. Let's build a foundation on which this network can rest, and rest comfortably. I don't mean rest like relax. I mean, you know, be here, right? Be settled, be solid, have a firm foundation, all that build your home on a rock, not on sand stuff. So please call now, 877-378-8669 with your $5 a month commitment. For one-time gifts with larger amounts, $20, you get the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or the Take Action, Make History Pride sticker. $50, real change comes from the grassroots tote bags. $75, the collector's item Thom Hartmann mug. $100 gift, your choice of the Free Speech TV face mask or the Wilmington on Fire DVD. $120 gift, my book, The Hidden History of Oligarchy, signed by the author, or the Free Speech TV Justice t-shirt. $240 gift, the two-book set, Reclaiming Our Democracy book set, we're calling it, which is the Hidden History of American Monopolies and the Hidden History of American Oligarchy. Or you can join us for the Thom Hartmann meet and greet, kind of an off-the-record conversation on Zoom. $360, there's the Thom Hartmann University summer box set with the our bumper sticker, the Free Speech TV bumper sticker, the Take Action, Make History Pride sticker, Free Speech TV Change from the Grassroots tote bag, the Wilmington on Fire DVD, and the collector's item Thom Hartmann mug. And with a $1,000 gift, we'll put you in the line to come here to Portland, which is a beautiful town. I know we've all seen the footage of about a 5-square-block area downtown where there was so much conflict, but you know, that's like a part of Portland that most Portland residents never see, never go. You know, this is a beautiful town. Some of the greatest restaurants everywhere, anywhere. So anyhow, you can come and visit us with a $1,000 gift. But bottom line, it's $5 Friday. Call now. It's just $5, right? And if we can get lots and lots of people to kick in $5, we can build that foundation. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Our 1-hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3-hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. So back in the day, and I mean back in the 1780s, literally, when the Constitutional Convention was happening in Philadelphia in the summer of 1787, there was this debate about the quality of the vote.
whether people who only landowners should be allowed to vote, stuff like that. And, in order to ensure that well-informed people who really care about voting are the only ones voting. It didn't pass. It was rejected by the framers of the Constitutional Convention, this idea that only landowners should be allowed to vote. Never made it in the Constitution. But a variation on this is now being proposed in the Arizona legislature. And State Representative John Kavanaugh, who's the chair of the committee that's pushing this legislation, says the quality of the vote is important. We have to look at the quality of votes as well. I've got a new video all about this for the supporters of our program over at thomhartmann.com. Check it out. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Ron in Eagles Nest, New Mexico. Hey, Ron, what's on your mind today? Ron? Ron has been on hold for a while there, Joyce. He's on line 2, if you want to pick it up, and maybe something got lost. I'm not sure. Charles in Miami. Hey, Charles, you're on the air. What's up?
Hey, how you doing, Tom? Love your show.
Thank you. Always nice to hear from you, Charles. What's on your mind today?
Okay, well, I was calling about the game is rigged. The political game is rigged, and I was destroying our lives. And it just made me, I just was hearing something from you, and I was just thinking about Trump. I remember at the end of Trump's presidency how he was saying, he was fighting against, like urbanizing some areas and the government, funding public housing, helping people struggling. And it just made me realize how racist these developers are. And, when they come and they say, well, we're going to revitalize this area. And I've said it to you before about gentrification. If they're not hiring people in that neighborhood, then they're going to kick those people out.
Yep.
Because if you can't pay your rent.
This is why a lot of communities are saying, for example, here in Portland, if you want to build new housing, like apartments and things like that, 20% of it has to be set aside for low-income people at a low-income price.
And then you think about when there's important decisions to be made on the Supreme Court. Joe Manchin, you think that, you might have a chance, and it's been happening. They had another judge before they used to vote Democrat sometimes, but you think you have a chance. But when it comes up to those big decisions, they just still break your heart as a Democrat, and they vote Republican.
Yeah.
As far as violence and, they're saying that on Fox News there's so much violence, and you think about the guns that they're allowing on the streets, and I just think right now police are sandbagging. We've exposed the police to a video camera on all their law breaking and felonious acts, and I just think that they're taking it out on the public now. They're just saying to criminals, have at it. So that's like a rigged system as well. And last but not least, the healthcare system. Oh man, I'm sorry, I lost it. But thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
I'll come back another day.
Okay, Charles, thanks for the call. I'm with you on all your points, and in fact, healthcare is my next book, so I'm really with you on that. I did an extraordinary amount of research on that, and it's amazing how rigged the healthcare system is in America. Charles, thanks for the call. Greg in Germantown, Maryland. Hey, Greg, what's up?
Well, back in the early 60s when Kennedy was shot, my mother and father were both CIA covert agents in the stationed in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And when Kennedy was killed, Dad came home, and I heard him talking to Mom saying that they'd heard about this on the radio, and it was quite a shock to them, and they needed to contact the station chief to find out what the Soviets were going to do. So the next day, they were back in the house, and they were talking, and they said the station chief had said there was no problem with the Soviets and didn't need to worry about it. So the covert division was really quite small in the CIA. So later, and Dad knew people, they have pigs and all that stuff. But later on, Dad was also OSS World War II. So later on, in the early 70s, the CIA had heard the same stuff everybody had been saying, that the CIA had been involved. This has been repeated over and over and over. And so they said, well, we need to do an investigation on this. So they did a 2.5-year thorough investigation of all the players in the CIA that could have possibly done it, and they came back that none of these people were involved. So Dad cornered me at the kitchen and to tell me this because he thought I had been convinced that the CIA had done it from all the speculation about it. And he just said, look, they did this investigation and this is the result. And I was like, why are you telling me this? He says, because I didn't want you to think that we would do something like that we would assassinate a president.
At least not in the United States. I mean, let me tell you about Mr. Mossadegh. But yeah.
Well, that was a wholly different world, which I could talk about at another time. And
I understand.
I have other inside information, but I'd rather not talk about it at this time. But really, knowing the CIA like I did, I didn't think that they'd be involved in that because they are, as strangely as it seems, solidly behind every president, regardless of party.
That's right. And that's the whole point. And the CIA had nothing to do with killing Kennedy. It was the mafia. I mean, it was when Richard Nixon left office as vice president and John Kennedy became president. At that point in time, J. Edgar Hoover had been claiming for the previous 30 years that there was no such thing as the mafia. And the reason why was because he was being blackmailed by Santos Trafficante down in Florida. He would go down to Hialeah with Clyde Tolson, and Santos would, put him up and give him money to gamble with and give him whatever he wanted, and was blackmailing him. Hoover was being blackmailed. And so there had never been more than, I believe it was 30 or 35 prosecutions of organized crime in the United States in any one year prior to 1960, ever. And in 1961, Bobby Kennedy brought 700 cases against the mafia. And that was the thing that triggered the assassination of his brother. And I think, frankly, ultimately him as well, although Lamar is the guy who knows this stuff better than I do. But, they were facing an existential crisis, the mob was. And but that's a kind of a whole other thing. Go ahead.
Dad didn't share that information with me that you're describing. He stuck to the facts he wanted me to know about.
Yeah.
He normally would never ever talk shop. The only reason I heard him around the house is they didn't know I could hear him when they were talking.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, and it wasn't widely known. I mean, for the first 6 months after the assassination, both Bobby and Lyndon Johnson assumed that it was the Cubans, that it was Castro who had killed Kennedy, because the association between Lee Oswald and Cuba was leaked to the press within an hour of the assassination of Kennedy. And of course, it was just not the case. And but in fact, one of the guys that I interviewed for the book, Legacy of Secrecy, Harry Enrique Ruiz Williams, he was one of the two leaders of the Bay of Pigs invasion. And he was a very close friend of Robert Kennedy, and he was running this off-the-shelf operation to assassinate Castro on behalf of Bobby Kennedy. And he just had wild stories to tell about this. But I'm starting to wander off into a whole other territory. I guess anything goes Friday.
Friends of Bay of Pigs.
Yeah.
The CIA did fly those operations, even though the Navy turned down the operation at the last minute.
Oh yeah, I know. And Jack was furious because he hadn't been told. I mean, the Bay of Pigs was originally conceived as Richard Nixon's October surprise. It was supposed to happen in the fall of 1960 because Nixon was being beat up by Kennedy. Kennedy in the election of 1960, one of his big talking points was Nixon let Cuba go communist. And
Dad refused.
Go ahead.
Yes, well, Dad refused to go to Vietnam, saying actually it was Laos at the time because they were running Nixon was running that illegal operation that Laos.
Well, this is the story that Harry told me, and I mean he face to face. I was in Golden, Colorado, having lunch with Harry Williams, and he told me this story that after the assassination of Jack Kennedy, it was about 2 weeks later, they had this plan an effective plan to assassinate Castro and replace him with a fellow by the name of Almeida, who was the number 3 guy in Cuba. He was the guy who ran the Cuban military. So you had, Fidel, you had Raul, and then you had Juan Almeida, and who was black, by the way, and he also ran the military. And Harry had hooked up with Almeida, and Almeida had agreed that if the CIA, or not, it wasn't even the CIA, it was this off-the-shelf operation that Bobby Kennedy was running illegally out of the White House. If they could take down Castro, then Almejida would step into that power vacuum and realign Cuba with the United States. And so after the assassination of Jack Kennedy, Harry and two other people went in and met with Lyndon Johnson, and met with Lyndon Johnson and said, we still have, and Bobby Kennedy was one of them, we still have this operation. Almejida is still ready to go with us on this. And all you need to do is give us permission. And LBJ just exploded at them. And he said, I'm so sick and tired of these effing Cubans, and I'm not going to get involved in any more of this effing Cuba stuff. And I'm going to make my stand against communism as far as I can get away from this blank continent. I'm going to do it in Vietnam. And thus, here we are. So, it was...
some other time I'll talk about my knowledge about CIA in Vietnam.
Okay, Greg, for another Friday when we can talk about anything we want. Greg, thanks for the call. We'll be back. It's 45 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be back with more of your calls right after this. By the way, if you want the whole story on all that stuff that I was just riffing about, the book is called Legacy of Secrecy by Lamar Waldron and Thom Hartmann.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
That's past the hour. Back with more of your calls on Anything Goes Friday in just a minute. And welcome back, Jeff in Portland, Oregon. Hey, Jeff, what's on your mind today?
Hey, happy Friday, Tom. And yeah, like you said earlier, shout out to Sue's Daily Stack and your newsletter. Both are well worth.
Doesn't she do an incredible job with that?
It's, yeah, very, very impressive, and I always appreciate it. So, Tom, I wanted to get into the internal threat of fascist takeover of America that you've raised this week. But first, I want to give you one more example of how Reagan rigged his victory over Carter in 1980. I'm sure you know about this, but you don't. I haven't heard you mention it. But when Rick Perlstein was promoting his book Reaganland, he gave an interview, and he talked about how the Reagan camp had stolen Carter's debate notes. So basically,
that's public
Reagan
knowledge.
being the yeah, but you know, and I mean, a lot of people don't remember it, but Reagan, being the actor that he was, he basically was able to rehearse his lines for that debate, and it was only a week before the election. So certainly, the treason that you speak of involving, often speak of involving the hostage situation, and this debate, you know, rehearsal. Performance definitely swung the election to Reagan. So, you know, I think those two factors.
That's a good point. I had completely forgotten about that, Jeff. Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah, I think Perlstein said that going into the debate, the polls were pretty close, only a week before the election. And then
Carter was ahead until about a month before the election.
Right, and then because of the treason with the hostages, it got closer, and then the debate kind of put it over the edge.
The main tipping point was when Carter tried to rescue them, and the helicopter went down in the desert. That was the point at which became, you know, it started looking like Jimmy Carter was not the strong character that he was campaigning as.
I think Perlstein said even with a week to go, where that debate, that was the one and only debate, and it was only a week before the election, it was still a very close race. And I think that helicopter situation had happened prior to that. So
it had, yeah.
But anyway, Tom, you know, in regards to your Hartmann reports yesterday and today, you know, I believe we need to amp up our rhetoric. Do you think it's hyperbole to start asking ourselves as Democrats if whether we're going to be the party of Neville Chamberlains and keep appeasing these anti-democracy forces in the GOP, or are we going to start standing up and fighting back and become a party of Winston Churchill's? You know, and it's been a while since you've mentioned it, but for people who can't imagine it happening here, they really should check out that HBO miniseries from last year called The Plot Against America, based on the excellent novel by Philip Roth.
Yeah.
But
that's the one where the Jewish family is living in the United States in the 40s, and the America First movement takes over. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
We watched that. It's amazing.
Yeah, it imagines if Lindbergh, the American First candidate, would have won the 1940 election,
right.
I believe. Yeah, and so it really can help you extrapolate what we're up against right now. But do you think it's too strong a language to start calling these people within our party who want to keep trying to negotiate with these extremely anti-democratic forces that they only want to weaken Biden's agenda?
They're somewhere between Neville Chamberlain and I forget his first name, Mr. Quisling, the Norwegian turncoat. But no, I don't think it's hyperbolic at all, Jeff. I'm very disappointed, frankly, that the Democrats have allowed themselves to get sucked into this BS game that Mitch McConnell's playing. Jeff, thanks for the call. We'll be back. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. So David Perry over at Medium.com put together a list of 38 reasons to investigate the Trump administration. Everything from the Russian influence over the 2016 election, to the Trump family's collusion with Russia, to Ivanka Trump's trademarks, to federal spending at Trump properties, to the civilians killed by Trump's drone strikes, to the Trump administration's role in turning the United States into the global epicenter for the COVID-19 pandemic. Yes, we are. Yes, it's grim. Their decision to sideline the CDC, politicizing mask wearing just to try to get himself reelected, the number of people who died because the White House kept PPE from blue states, from Democratic-led states, the contents of the Trump documents that Trump refused to release to the House Judiciary Committee and other committees, all the people who wouldn't speak, at all, ignoring subpoenas, violations of the Hatch Act, the deportation of COVID-positive immigrant families, illegal altering of records. Anyhow, there's a whole list. It's over at ThomHartmann.com. Check it out. Anything Goes Friday. Michael in Memphis, Tennessee. Hey, Michael, what's up?
Hey, Tom, man, where do I start? Merrick Garland, the Justice Department. I'm a black person. I'm a black male. I live in Memphis, Tennessee, probably one of the most ass-backwards inbred places in the world. And you see what the Republicans are doing with these voting laws. And it's blatant. It's not like they're doing this in secret rooms. And they got, Fox News, Tucker Carlson cheerleading for him every night. Sean Hannity cheerleading every night. I live in Memphis. Every station here is conservative radio. Every show is conservative radio. And they're doing this in broad daylight. Now they're loosening gun restrictions where anybody can have a gun.
Yep.
And they're deputizing these ignorant people to watch over the black folk, when they vote.
Mm-hmm.
And
the GOP has asked for 10,000 volunteers to be poll watchers. And the bigger and uglier you are, the more they want you.
It goes back to slavery days, slave patrols, patty rollers.
Yep.
It's like they're rolling back the clock. Trump put 200 plus federal judges on the bench. So if you sue, it's legal.
Yep.
And you got the Supreme Court. You don't have any recourse. And I was talking earlier, Merrick Garland, and I was never really impressed with him in the first place, but you hear leaks every now and then, every other Friday about Matt Gaetz. Is anything really going to happen?
I think so.
You hear stuff with Roger Stone. Is anything really going to happen?
Probably not. He's been pardoned.
Right, he's been pardoned. But, if you continue to break laws, that doesn't excuse you, from further prosecution if you break new laws, right?
Yeah, I don't recall if his pardon came before or after January 6th.
Yeah, see, and that's why I don't understand. Yeah, and I sit back and I look at the Justice Department because, again, you and I are regular people. We break the law. They come with the thunder. It's done and it's over with. But if you have money like Trump and his family, they get to run out the clock. Trump has a lifetime. He has spent a lifetime running out the clock.
Yeah. He really has. He literally has. Yeah. And Bill Barr,
you
too.
got William Barr now.
Look at what Barr did in 1992. I mean, William Safire. Ask old folks about William Safire. Brilliant. One of America's most famous commentators and journalists for the New York Times. And he called him Cover-Up Barr. Cover-Up General Barr instead of Attorney General. Because that's what Bill Barr did. Yeah.
And people forget, how serious enough, because I got guys in the office. Well, Mike, you have to understand, no, it was treason, period. Don't tell me Oliver North followed orders. It was treason. He went in eyes wide open, all of them. Weinberger. And that's the thing. At what point does justice come? Because it doesn't look like Merrick Garland's going to do anything.
Step by step. Well, first of all, at least the Justice Department is in reasonable hands. I haven't been able to figure this out. And Merrick Garland was supposed to, I thought he was going to give a speech today. Maybe it's next week. Maybe I misheard it yesterday.
It was supposed to be today.
Yeah, I thought it was supposed to be today about voting rights and what the Justice Department is going to do about it. Apparently, it hasn't happened yet. I've got CNN on in the studio here and just keep track of the chyrons in case some big thing happens. And I haven't seen any evidence of Merrick Garland at all. But I suspect he's also dealing with the Justice Department. I mean, you have natural attrition, not to mention people getting fired, but you have people who just leave. And I know that there were a number of people in the Justice Department, fairly high up, who were so offended by stuff Trump was doing that they left. Good people. Who did Trump replace those people with? They're still there, right? So I mean, this is you can just watch Rachel Maddow just really struggling with this in her head. Whenever this topic comes up, I am too. Is Merrick Garland who was suggested by Orrin Hatch, the Republican, as the guy to put, is he just kind of slow walking stuff, or is he stuck in an environment where all the people around him are doing it? I honestly don't know the answer.
Isn't Orrin Hatch the same guy that wanted to change the Constitution? So wasn't Arnold Schwarzenegger running for president?
No. Merrick Garland was a federal judge.
Oh no, I'm talking about Orrin Hatch.
Oh, Orrin Hatch. Yes. I'm sorry. Yes. Oh. Among others.
Okay, so So not really. When he got his blessing, like okay,
right.
And nothing against Obama, but Obama was, and people got really angry. Not to say this on the gold side. People got really angry with Dr. Cornel West when he said about former President Obama. He understood his position, but he could have showed a lot more courage than he did.
Yeah.
And Merrick Garland was one of them.
I think he was between a rock and a hard place through much of his presidency. I will cut him a lot of slack, Michael, but I do have. Well, we'll just leave it at that. Michael, I got to run. I'm sorry. Thank you so much for the call. Hey, special thanks to Louise Hartman, Sean Taylor, Nate Atwell, Jamie Holly, Joyce the Hammer Nance, Nigel Peacock, Sue Nethercutt, Patrick Hoyt, Geraldine Halbert, Ron Hartenbaum, Chase Sprouse, Nicholas Miller, Pat Sweeney, Jabberwocky, Jay LeBlanc, Connor Arroyo, and Carne Verde. All the folks who work on this program. And thank you to you for participating with our program and spreading the good word and supporting our sponsors and our stations. Get out there, get active, tag. You're it. Have a great weekend.
Listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit TomHartmann.com.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More information at HelloFresh.com, code TOM. CB Distillery for sleeping and pain relief. More info at CBDistillery.com, code TOM. Annie's Kit Clubs, creativity delivered right to your door. More info is available at annieskitclubs.com/Tom. EasyFlow, personal air filtration system. Fresh air anywhere. More info at easyflowusa.com, code TOM. Masterclass with world-class instructors. More info at masterclass.com/Hartman. And Dinovite, only the best all-natural pet supplements. More info at dinovite.com.